What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Season Gaming Bitcast, episode 189. I am your host, Ainsley Bowden, joined by this fabulous-looking panel in front of you this morning. To my right, the man, the myth, the legend known as the Seven, Dan Rodriguez.
That's right, baby. I'm repping Travis and his Dying Light review today. I got a question. Like, if I unmuted myself during the intro, could I sing along with the opening music? I just wanted to try it one time, but not say anything about it. I was like, I don't want to screw stuff up. But maybe I'll see what happens next week.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Create. If you could create more work for me, I would just generally appreciate that.
I would like to, put some lyrics to the music.
Yeah, I think it would be good. Just 1 week, just mute the audio, but play the clip. But let Dan just beatbox the actual music for the intro.
Right. I can do it every week based on what our main topic is, and then freestyle. Right, yeah.
Dying Light.
Yeah. Who doesn't love a dynamic intro?
Yeah.
When they have the sitcom take over and do something weird with their introduction, it's always a great time.
It's like The Simpsons, right? Every intro is new.
Perfect.
That's right.
All right. So that's a green light in my book. So thanks, guys. All right. Good to see you.
Just below me, joining us, as always, you know him very well, Mr. Tie Guy Travis. What's happening, dude?
McClunky, and happy to be here, everyone. Exciting times in the games industry.
Don't sound too enthused.
I'm extremely
very exciting.
Yes. And joining us this week, he is back after a couple weeks, and very happy to announce that he is going to be joining us, at least for a short term, every week going forward, is our friend, host of Virtual Legality. You know him, Mr. Rick Hoeg. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here, and thank you for the invite and the card. I get my name in the corner here. This is fantastic. This is high production value.
Yeah. So this is a temporary setup for this week, but now that we have a proper 4-person panel, which is what we've kind of been working towards for a little while now, wanted to say a huge welcome to you, Rick, and thanks for joining us. I think that as we kind of talked about, and for the audience who's listening to this and everyone in the live chat right now, good morning, everyone. We've always kind of prided ourselves on giving you information or insight that hopefully you don't get anywhere else. And so as we look to create a 4-person panel and try to find the right fit, we had a fantastic show a couple weeks ago with Rick, and it just seemed like a perfect opportunity and a perfect fit. So obviously we talked offline, and we're going to do this for a while and see how it goes. But I think if nothing else, we'll give you a gaming show that is different from a bunch of the other podcasts out there. It goes without saying, we all know there are so many gaming podcasts out there nowadays, and you obviously have a lot of choice. You have limited time on who you can listen to, who you can watch. So, if you've already been joining us, obviously a huge thank you. But, hopefully this kind of gives us that extra piece that will separate us from a lot of other shows. So thank you.
And isn't it great how much content we can get now? Now, obviously ours is going to be the best. I'm not trying to undersell our podcast, but I remember being a kid and just having to go and scrounge, whether it's from Game Pros or magazines, and find that content and find that conversation. And there is so much from so many different avenues and so many different personalities and tones. I think when you announced that I was going to come on the panel here, I said that, we're going to be the intellectual, analytical, understanding based show. And I've been pitching us over on Virtual Legality all week, saying, hey, if you like this kind of stuff, if you like listening to me talk about this kind of thing, that's what they're doing over there. So come on over. I had a number of commenters say, well, you're not going to reduce your Virtual Legalities, right? I was like, no, this is an addition to. This is going to be great. Come on over, subscribe, because it is a place where I think we're going to be able to have discussions that nobody else is going to be able to have.
Yes.
We got lots of interesting perspectives in a very different avenue than just other folks who can do their own thing. And I will listen to those other podcasts because I love this industry. But I'm very, very excited to be here. And I think it's just a great time to be talking about video games. Tie Guy Travis's muted excitement over industry machinations notwithstanding, a hell of a lot's going on here.
Very, very true. And I think that's exactly it. I think that, we want to offer something that's unique and insightful. And I think that we'll do that even more so with your editions. So yeah, I'm super excited about it, honestly. And it's a perfect week because they're perfect week for you to join because there's a lot to talk about this week. Obviously, our kind of big topic this week is going to be the PlayStation acquisition of Bungie. We'll get into all the details there. And then we've got, Grand Theft Auto 6. We got Gran Turismo 7 and Ghostwire Tokyo for PlayStation coming up. We've got SIFU and Dying Light 2 reviews. So it's going to be a lot to talk about this week. So real quick, let me just announce, because we were doing a contest this week for people rating the show. So just getting our audio listeners kind of out there, the people who check us out on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Google Play, what have you. Nice. And so we're giving a copy of Elden Ring away for platform of choice. And I'm happy to announce, I don't think they're going to be here live in the chat, but happy to announce that McQuack 306 has won that copy. So, we do this by random number generator. His number came up, and I will reach out to him after the show, but just wanted to announce that. And of course, stay tuned for more giveaways in the future.
Congratulations, man. I was really rooting for McQuack 305, but you're all right. You're all right.
Elden Ring's a funny one, right? Because I see it abbreviated as ER all the time, and I keep thinking there's a medical story of some kind. So it's that one's a funny one for me to follow.
It was in our private chat, and I was like, "Is Ains at the hospital right now?"
Yes.
What is happening?
Well, it's completely out of context, and you just see ER. You're like, "Whoa!" It's like getting a phone call at 2 a.m.
Exactly.
Elden Ring. That'll be interesting. See, I'm going to be way outside my elements here because I'm terrible at Souls games. So
it's perfect.
It's perfect. You'll mostly have to tell me about them.
Because Travis and I adore them, and we'll be all over Elden Ring. Dan does not. So we're even again. We're 2 and 4.
Okay. So my perspective on Souls games is that I enjoy them for what they are, and I've long since lost most of the Twitch skills necessary to move through them with any amount of alacrity. And as we were talking about offline, it's I have limited amount of hours of the day, as you can imagine, and so I slam into a wall. I face a boss. I say, "Hey, that's pretty cool." And then I move on to whatever the next game is by the time it has released, because it took me that long to face one boss.
Yeah.
That's about me. Yep.
The key to beating a Souls game is to abandon your kids. So I find that really helps.
There are a few games that are like that. We'll get into that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, when a really good JRPG drops, I say, "Honey, it's gonna be a week. I'll see you then."
So that's definitely what's coming up with Elden Ring and Horizon for sure. It's like, I'm not going to be around. Anyway, speaking of challenging games, let's jump into what we're currently playing, and I'm going to kick us off because I can finally, luckily, the embargo just ended this morning. Talk about SIFU. So this was a very stiff embargo. You couldn't even mention that you were playing it up until this morning at 6 a.m. Central Time. So my review is up on the site. I know people have been checking out reviews all morning. This is a really, really unique game, everyone. It is. It's a game that right out of the gate, I said, speaking of Souls games, it's very challenging. Within a few hours of playing it, I said, "Dan, I don't know if you should buy this." After a few more hours of playing it, I said, "Dan, definitely don't buy this." And Dan knows that when I play games like this, I kind of give him the barometer of what he can expect, if he should be buying it. But it is very challenging. It requires a lot of the player to learn from dying. It actually made me think of games from the 8 and 16-bit era where it's like, you're going to die a lot, and you need to figure out the patterns, the enemy patterns, the things you need to do to overcome those challenges. It has roguelite elements to it. You can unlock skills permanently over time and things like this, but there are no things you can unlock which make the game easier. There's no increasing your strength, increasing your defense, anything like that. There is no way to tune difficulty in this game. And so it's 5 levels, and I say it plays out kind of like Kill Bill. You're on a revenge path. There's 5 people you want to kill. Each of them is at the end of a specific level. So there's 5 level, ends with a big boss at the end. What's interesting is the first level is actually quite easy. When you first play it, you're like, "Oh, this is going to be hard." But the first level is very, very straightforward. It's more of a tutorial, but it really ramps up in the second level and even more so in the third level. And I was about a few hours in, I was playing the second level, and I sitting down here by myself playing the game, and I said out loud, "I don't know how I'm going to beat this game for the review." Like and I play tough games a lot. People who follow me know this. And I was thinking to myself, man, there's something that's got to click here. And so I just stuck with it. I have over 20 hours in it now. And it does. There's this learning curve where once you get over that hump, this game becomes fantastic. It has a smoothness and just mechanically so sound in the combat. Once you get over that hump, that it's just so satisfying. It reminds me a little bit of Sekiro, where Sekiro will literally just beat you down over and over again. But once it clicks and once you figure out how to beat specific enemies, it is incredibly satisfying. It's that type of game. So I really enjoyed it. I would say check out my review. If you're on the fence, I don't really know what to say to you because obviously it's going to be personal for everyone. But if you enjoy challenging games, overcoming it, persistence is key. There is something very special here from this game. Slowclap has developed something that I think is going to be really appreciated, similar to like a Returnal from last year, where it wasn't huge, but the people who did play it and enjoy it really enjoyed it. That's what you're going to get out of SIFU.
Returnal's awesome, for the record.
Yes, it is.
It's pretty great.
Mechanically, I mean, what does it play like? You used Souls as a couple of reference points there. Is it combo based? All I've seen is the videos.
Yeah, so the videos make it look like a beat 'em up, right?
It does.
And it is, except for making it function like a beat 'em up is very hard. So basically how it works is when enemies attack, you can either parry, which is a very precise timing thing, or you can dodge, and you can dodge left, right, up, down. So like if someone tries to sweep you, you dodge up and you jump over it, right? Someone tries to hit you high, you can duck under it. And so timing is absolutely critical. And the window for failure on the timing is tiny. So, you may think to myself, oh my God, I dodged that, but you missed it by like a millisecond, right? And it didn't work. So it is combo based, as you said. There's a ton of different attacks and combos you can pull off and different moves. But it's all about knowing when to play defense and defend, and then you open yourself up windows. So if you perfectly dodge something or perfectly parry something, then your window opens to pull off your combo.
But it's primarily counters are a necessity, it sounds like, whether dodge or parrying.
Yes, and enemies will dodge and parry you, right? So like you can go on the offensive and try to just button mash at them, but they'll block and then smack you quick. Okay. You cannot button mash your way through this game. It's impossible.
Well, I've been very impressed by the animations I've seen in the videos. Does it continue to be a looker throughout?
Beautiful, beautiful game. Very unique art style, which I think everyone has seen. I said it's simple yet beautiful.
I love the videos.
Yeah, and each level is a unique locale. So you go to different locations on all the 5 levels, and they have their own type of thing. And my favorite level is the 3rd one. It's called Museum, and you go through a museum, but it's got elements in it out of kind of movies. Like there's things almost like Enter the Dragon as you're playing. So you get dropped in, and suddenly the lights go out, right? And then there's like shadows of enemies and different colors, and the boss fights are just very Kill Bill like. It's like, okay, you've made it to the boss, now you get a cinematic, and it's a standoff in its own arena. Every boss has its own arena, and you just feel like, okay, now shit's about to get real, or you know what I mean? Like, and the bosses are very, very unique and challenging in and of themselves. I remember the first time I got to the final boss of the game, who is the hardest. I don't even know if I hit him once.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally just killed me like 7 times in a row, and I don't think I touched him. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to take some time. And it did, but I get him. And now that I've overcome the hump and I know most of the enemies and the patterns, and I've kind of got most things down, now it's about perfecting your runs, right? Now I'm trying to beat it as young as I can with it dying as least as possible. And it's just one of those games. If you love those challenges, you love the type of competition with yourself and with a game, you're going to like this game.
Sweet.
Well, one of the things I said last year was that Returnal was one of the first games I can remember in a long time where I wanted to gain mastery, that I was enjoying it enough that I wanted to be able to flow and do those kinds of things because it looked so cool and felt so good when you were doing that. It sounds like that's the kind of thing that you're getting from a SIFU. And I apologize, I don't quite know the pronunciation. SIFU?
It's just SIFU.
SIFU.
Okay, SIFU. Now, I have a feeling I probably know the answer to this, but as we've talked about before, I think I'm a narrative guy. I like the cinema. I like the epic stuff. I don't anticipate a really deep narrative here, but does it have a good drive to whatever it is you're doing? No, that's shaking of heads.
Well, there's a very, very simple narrative, and
Okay.
I don't talk about spoilers in my review or
Right.
I don't want to, but it's basically a revenge tale, and it's as simple as you've now grown up. You witnessed something as a child. You've now grown up. You've become a kung fu master, right? In theory, and you want to get back at these 5 people.
You want to
who
make them
harmed
pay.
you. Yep, that's
So
it.
it's Streets of Rage level.
Yeah,
Guys took your girls. You're gonna go get them.
pretty much. And like I said,
apparently he's so set on revenge that he decides to spend his entire life trying to kill them all.
Well, right, and that's the mechanic, right? I've seen that in the videos. You die and then you're older.
Yeah, every time you die, you gain years. Yeah.
Yeah, you start at age 20, and there's a death counter. So when you die, your death counter goes up by 1, and you age that amount. So the first time you die, you're now 21. If you die a second time, there's ways to bring your death counter down as you're playing. Like if you beat a bunch of enemies or mini bosses without dying, for instance, or without getting hit, it actually will bring your death counter back down mid-level, which is cool.
Okay.
But say you die again right away, your death counter goes to 2 and you age 2 years. So now you go from 21 to 23. If you die immediately again, it's 3. Now you go from 23 to 26. So it compounds, right?
Okay.
So when you get to like the first time I got to the second level, I was aged like 56. Just the second level. But then like as I went through the first level again, and the second time I got to the second level, I was age 23. And the whole thing is really getting good enough and dying less so that you can get to the end of the game before aging out. The nice thing here from a checkpoint perspective is whatever age you get to the start of a next level as, it saves that. So no matter what you do in that single playthrough, you can always start again at the lowest age you reached a level.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah. So I'm now all the way to level 3 without having lost a year. I'm age 20 at level 3.
Okay.
And there are shortcuts as well. Again, kind of similar to Souls. Like if you get further enough through a level, you can unlock shortcuts so that when you play that level again, you don't have to go through the whole level again.
Oh.
And some of the levels have bigger shortcuts than others. Like the 3rd level is the only one where you can go in and go straight to the boss, which is unique. So basically what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to get all the way to the 4th level without being age 20, 21, something like that.
Now, is there any meta structure to why you're doing that other than mastery or potentially achievements? Is there anything you're getting, bonuses, concept art, good stuff, or it's because you want to?
It's because you want to, pretty much. There's some collectibles throughout that basically there's this board where you put your collectibles, and it basically just gives you a little context to the 5 nemesis and where they are in this state of the world, right, as you've grown up. But that's about it. It's very light on narrative story context. It's very much like a old school beat 'em up where you're going to go through these levels, you're going to fight these bosses, and you're going to get better at it and enjoy it just because it's a game. That's pretty much it.
I get my karateka on. We'll do it.
Yeah. I get Fury vibes from this game. You guys ever play that game Fury?
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
It doesn't ring a bell to me either.
Yeah, it's like
F-U-R-I. No,
you play like a samurai who's trying to escape prison, and basically it's just like a boss rush type game. But kind of reminds me of that. That was another game that was also kind of divisive because it was difficult, but I absolutely adore that game. Yeah. Also, I saw. So, what did you go for with score, Ains? I saw the IGN reviewer Mitchell Salzman, who's a friend of mine, a really, really great reviewer. I trust. He gave it a 9 out of 10, which is he loves difficult games, that sort of stuff. So.
He's a fantastic reviewer. He's one of my favorites. Sorry,
thank
Travis,
you.
are too.
Yeah, he is great. I'll pass along your compliments.
Oh, absolutely.
I was a little lower initially, and this is why it's funny. We were going to have this kind of discussion. This is why I don't have a score in my head. When I review a game, I don't have a score in mind until I'm literally writing the review and I've completed the game. Because if I would have reviewed this or given it a score in my head early on, say several hours in, I would have been in the 6 to 7 range. But as I completed it and mastered it, I ended on an 8 is what I gave it, which on the season gaming scale is superb. I went back and forth on going a little higher. The reasons I didn't are really just two. Is one, as we just said, it is very straightforward. There's not a lot of narrative. There's not a lot to discover or unpack or anything like that. I wish to a degree they would have fleshed out the relationship between you and these nemesis a little more, or that their backstories a little more. The only other thing that really annoys me in the game at times, and trust me, it will you as well, is the camera. So the camera is on the right thumbstick. You can move it at all times. However, you need your thumb to hit the buttons to do the moves against the enemies who are constantly barraging at you. And once you get, especially to level 3 and beyond, there's several instances where you're in very tight spaces fighting multiple enemies. And the camera does that 3D game thing where it's like, you get pushed against the wall and you can't even see what's happening. And in this game, like I said, very unforgiving. You just miss a quick thing real quick and you're dead. And if you respawn right at that spot. So you're trying to gather yourself, and it's easy to die due to the camera. When you're trying to get through the game with dying as little as possible, it can be very frustrating. So what I had hoped for was that in those instances where the camera would get behind a wall or behind the player, it would kind of swing around and recorrect, you know what I mean? But it doesn't do that. So it can be a little frustrating at times, but that's a long-winded way. But I ended on an 8. I do really enjoy the game. I think it's going to be one of those games that is cherished by a small group of people. I don't see it reaching kind of broad appeal, just for the reasons we've already talked about.
Yeah, that's just like Fury. I really am getting Fury vibes from this, everything you're saying.
Yeah. And by the way, I saw a couple people mention about not having a PS5 or PC. It is a timed exclusive. So Slow Clap did confirm it is coming to Xbox down the road. So if you're an only Xbox player for some reason and you're you want to play this but don't have PS5 or PC, it will be coming to Xbox too.
And speaking of PlayStation, I saw this morning they're having a little trouble giving their deluxe early access away. Have you seen any of that?
Yes, they actually responded to it. Slow Clap did, and said they're working with PlayStation right now to try and fix it. It is not unlocking for some people who paid for early access, which is not a good thing.
That is troublesome, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know.
From a legal perspective as well.
Sure, yeah. I don't know if they're going to be doing refunds or what have you. But anyway, we
said you'd give us a game at a certain time, and you didn't give it to us. And,
Well, it's today, right? So, I mean, if we're getting real lawyery, they have another, however many hours. Did they say what time? That's where you start to dig into the weeds. That's a virtual legality. That's not a Bitcast.
Oh, for sure.
So let's go read some terms of service for 20 minutes. It'll be great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's also the question of when is a game so incomplete that it counts as kind of not really being the full game? Like people who release games broken or you can't complete it because your save file gets deleted or whatever.
I have a lot of people that want me to do a Battlefield 20. Is it 42?
42.
It's like I don't know enough about it. I just watched the train wreck from afar.
You can do broken games in general because they're not the only example. People have tried to sue game developers over games being so broken that they felt cheated.
Sure.
There's a lot of examples of that, and 2042 is probably the most recent one.
Usually I'm walking people off the ledge of, is this false advertising, that kind of thing. There's a lot of leeway and it has to be intentional for the most part. I did do a video that was pretty interesting about a year ago where there was a Steam game that had sold pre-orders and then swapped to a different game entirely. And I was like, okay, that one's not going to play. So we do have those conversations, and I talked about Destiny, I think recently, about them vaulting Forsaken, which is a separate purchased product, and going, that's an interesting thing to vault.
Games as a service, man, it's going to be more common going forward than I think anybody realizes. But
we'll see. I'm going to continue my opprobrium towards Bungie on what they're doing until I die, I think. We'll see. When we get into Bungie, it's like I would love to see some resources thrown at not doing that to the things people purchase, but we'll talk about it.
I don't think you're going to get what you want there.
Well, they won't get me back. I'm just one guy. I'm not the market, right?
Yeah. No, I'm saying that as a Well, we'll get into why I think the Bungie thing is terrible, but
let me get this super chat from Mr. Luke over at Xbox Expansion Pass.
Yeah, man. $2 super chat. Thanks, Luke. Can you address difficulty versus gatekeeping?
No.
We were having a side conversation in DM about this morning. So
this is fun. So our videos kind of
yeah. See what's happening over here.
Whoa.
All right, we'll have to figure that one out. But anyway,
concept that out.
Yeah, SIFU is definitely going to be another game, like Elden Ring, probably later this month. That will bring up the conversation around difficulty, the overlap of difficulty with accessibility, and do developers, publishers have a responsibility to focus more on that? I've already made it clear that SIFU does not hold your hand. In fact, it basically punches your hand away. So this is one of those games. It's not for everyone. And I know I've had that discussion before, and I'm all for making games as accessible as possible so as many people can enjoy it as possible. But I also, and I'd like to hear your guys' thought on this, I am also of the stance of, hey, every single game doesn't have to be for every single player. And I like developers having just the freedom to make the game they want to make. It may not be for you. It may be too hard for you. It may not be whatever it may be. I'm okay with that. And I'm fine with saying, hey, this game's not for me, whatever it may be. So I don't think it's really, I don't know. I don't fall in the gatekeeping stance of this game is difficult, and if it's too hard for you, so be it. That's just a fact, and that's going to exist for some games, in my opinion.
Yeah, not every game can be for every person. I mean, look at dating sims. Dan can never play them because he has no heart. No emotions.
Content-based gatekeeping. No, I mean, I've talked about this. Really I've talked about this a lot. To me, I'm very much in favor of the developers getting to make the game that they want. And if that includes an easy mode and an easier mode or something that they want to allow people to proceed through the narrative or whatever else, see the content that they purchased, absolutely go for it. If they don't, I'm of the mind to say absolutely go for that as well. I don't view that as a problem in the same fashion that some folks in the gaming media in particular do, because I think it is important to be able to make something that you're driven by, that you're passionate about. And if that's a super hard thing that demands mastery, then that's what's getting your developers out of bed in the morning anyway. That hopefully there's a unity in spirit in wanting to make that. And if they feel that it takes something away from the product, the art that they put out there is by putting a menu item on, you can disagree with that. I have no problem saying, hey, I think you're wrong, but they should be allowed to do that. And I think it works out. I think if you want to play Sekiro, great. And if you don't, there's 1,000 other things for you to play. And I would rather see that variety on the menu of video gaming and life than to not have that and have everything be essentially 100% the same thing in order to make sure that it can be played by everybody everywhere.
Yep. Yeah, I'm kind of of the same mind. You get to a point where, like, I've never felt, I guess, gate kept out of the game. Like from a developer. I've never went and said, well, they did this specifically to keep me from playing it. I think, I do that just well enough on my own. But you don't, I don't know, man. Like, I think that you could make it, and any of these games probably more accessible with a difficulty slider. Obviously, their choice. They do what they want to do. I've never played, I don't know, MLB The Show and been like, man, I really want to, shoot that first baseman. So I pull out my, MP5. It's a completely different thing. It's that's a weird reference, but it's just some games are for you, some games aren't. You know which ones are for you, and you know which ones aren't. If they are gatekeeping, I don't know why a developer would be like, let's make this game. Like, I don't think it goes to their mind, to the smallest audience we possibly can. Like, they obviously want to sell as many copies as they want, but they also want to retain that, artistic whatever, they want to
vision for the game.
Their vision. Yeah, it's so fine. There's like Hoeg said, there's plenty of games out there to play. So I'm fine with it. I know where my wheelhouse is. It's nowhere near those games. So, that's fine with me. Totally fine.
Agreed. By the way, Nick, you said, did I play SIFU on PC or PS5? PS5. I played it on. So I actually had a code for PC too. I just preferred to play it on PS5. So, and I did write about some of the no issues with the game, by the way. Not a single bug, not a single hiccup. It was flawless, which is rare to say nowadays, I feel.
Yeah, that'd be nice after my weekend, but I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably a good segue to the other game we were going to talk about.
Oh my God, seeing your post felt so vindicating.
We'll get to it, but I really like it. I really am enjoying it when it's on. But man, am I having trouble.
Yep. Yeah. I'll talk about that when we get to that review.
Sorry guys, where that hum came from. I don't know where that's coming from. So
I
tried muting. I
noticed it's going away when you speak, Ains, and then it comes back when you're quiet.
Really? Okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll try and figure it out in a second. Like this other super chat from Mr. Game Positive, Dan.
Yeah, Game Positive, the $6.99 Canadian. Welcome to the show, Hoeg. I feel like Ains will never respect me unless I complete SIFU.
Very true.
PS T-shirt game is on point. GG.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it, brother.
I don't think I have any PlayStation T-shirts. You'll only ever likely see me in my virtual reality stuff or sweaters. But I didn't want to overly lawyer it here on show one.
Yeah,
I have a few Destiny neckties. I don't know if that counts as something.
All right, so we talked about SIFU. Like I said, find my review online. I'm actually probably going to put up an article with some tips and hints too, because the game's a little cryptic at times with how things work. So I think I can help some people with that. And I may actually stream it tonight. So if you're someone who doesn't want to be spoiled on some of the later levels or bosses, obviously that's not going to be for you. But if you just want to see someone playing it who can kind of explain some of the mechanics and how to overcome certain things and what shortcuts do and some of the menu stuff, I may do that tonight as well. So stay tuned. Why don't we jump over to Dying Light 2, the other big game that's out? Travis, you reviewed it. I know a bunch of the people, especially in chat, asked me about our review. We actually did not get a code for Dying Light 2. I don't know what happened with PR there. We did reach out to them. So there's just, the game is out now, I realize, but it's a big game. And for one of our reviewers to kind of buy it at launch, try and rush through, as Travis, you said you put 80 hours into it? Or
80 hours into my main playthrough, 20 hours into my second playthrough.
Right. So to try and do that and get a review out, it wouldn't be out till next week at the absolute earliest. And it just, that doesn't really work. But luckily, we have Travis here who reviewed it for IGN. So you can speak a little bit or fully about your experience. I know we touched on a little bit last week. So
I'll try to keep it brief, but you can simply just read my review. It's a 3,000 word review, and the video version is about 9 minutes long, about half the amount of words. But the overview is that it's a fantastic game. It has incredibly good parkour. Its combat is super fun and over the top. It's got lots of interesting characters for you to interact with, a beautiful open world, all of that stuff. And it is held back incredibly by a absolute sea of bugs that it's almost drowning in. So, from my perspective, it's easily an 8 or a 9 without the bugs. And I think it probably will get to that point someday. But as it stands right now, it has tons of bugs. This was experienced both by myself. I had probably very few bugs in the first 20, 30 hours, and then a couple bugs about 40 to 50 hours. And then the last 30 hours of my first playthrough, I was dealing with a lot of bugs. So it's one of those games where the longer you've been playing on your save file, it's kind of like Skyrim. You know how things break over time. One thing will break here, one thing will break there. And then you have a file that's got 200 hours on it. And you're like, all right, this file's basically broken now. It's just, I did too much stuff to it. That sort of happens in this game. And it got to the point where my final 3 or 4 hours with the game was crashing every hour at least. It was just really falling apart at the finish line. And there was a day one patch that fixed a lot of that, and they were deploying patches during the review period, but there's still stuff that, they're not going to catch everything. There's my team alone at IGN discovered lots of bugs, and we were we had like an open line with the PR team, and we were just like reporting tickets. Like, here's something we found, here's something we found. And you may not be affected by some of the bugs. We had probably about 18 people with codes at the IGN team because we're creating a wiki for it, so that we had lots of people playing it. Yep. And out of those like 18 people, I would say probably 16 or 15 of us dealt with some level of bugs. 2 of us had our save files completely corrupted and still cannot access our files, which obviously is like the worst type of bug. But most people were kind of like me, where we saw some stuff, and then the longer we played, we saw more stuff. But we were able to beat the game, and it didn't like ruin the experience. And then some people got lucky and didn't really experience any bugs, or not many that they noticed anyway. Although those people typically are the ones that played the fewest hours. So if you're not experiencing bugs, feel lucky, but I'm sure it'll happen to you at some point, because the game does not perform the longer you play. But yeah, I mean, aside from the bugs, it does so much well, and it's such a fun game to play. My real only other criticism is that the main character is super boring. Just the main story is not. They sort of do like that thing where you see flashbacks to his dark backstory, and you kind of always assume that there's going to be like some, something that happens later in the game that explains that and that is like interesting, and kind of just doesn't happen. I feel like they didn't know how to end the game. They were kind of just they kind of just followed the natural flow of wanting to do cool activities, interacting with cool characters, but the main character is definitely the most boring character in the game. But other than that, it's a great game. It really is, and I have no doubt in 3 months and 6 months it'll probably be an 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Did we just lose Travis?
I mean, either that or he's doing an excellent.
Am I still here?
Now you are.
You returned.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I lost all of you guys. All the boxes just went black all at once, and then yeah. 7 out of 10 is my review score. I stand by it. I think it's a fair score for where the game is at right now, and yeah, come at me, bro, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
they already did.
There is a come at me, bro, out there. It's interesting, right? Because like I almost feel like there should be one of those tickers on the bottom. If you watch sports, you get kind of chance of victory graphs that they have now. And I would love to see like Ains's SIFU review going from a 6 as it crawls up as he gains mastery, and Travis's Dying Light review being a 9 from the opening or whatever in the fun gameplay, and then and it's like, oh, it crashed again, it loses a half point, that kind of thing. Because I also have played it, certainly not 100 hours. I just got it as a normal consumer of video games, who's trying to play R-rated games while having 2 young girls in the house. So you find your time. Yes. Otherwise, you're playing Canyon Bridge of Spirits again, which also fun. But I enjoy it so much. I like it has so much beauty right from the start, and then when it opens up the world, you can see exactly how they're going to do it, and it's going to be fun. But I have to tell you, very first mission, you have to clear out some, I think they're virals, infected. I can never remember what our zombies are in our various games. And doesn't trigger. You have to turn on the power to something, doesn't trigger. And the music's going weird. I can't figure it out. You kind of have to go back to a checkpoint a while back. Then you go through, and this is all in the first 3 hours of me playing it, hard crash to desktop. Now, on that one, the way I play video games now, especially in the current generation, I'm constantly fiddling with the video options to decide which I like best. And I think it really, really disliked that. I was noticing that it was not, I was changing things in the menu. It was locking those, and it stopped actually changing them, film grain and whether the mode it was in. And then it said, oh no. And then it died. So a little bit on me, I guess. But yeah, it's not what you like to have as your video game time. If you got a limited amount of time, you don't want to go in there being like, I hope it doesn't hard crash this time. So I really, really thoroughly have enjoyed what I've gotten to play when I've gotten to play it. But, Travis has made me trepidatious. Not that I'm ever going to get to the end of this game. Ending doesn't matter. That's not, hey, we're never getting there.
Sounds like more of a sandbox for fun game. But
tell me how an Assassin's Creed ends. I have no idea. That Viking's going to be in England forever.
Honestly, the first 30 hours of that game, though, when you're at the beginning and you're kind of solving that war encounter that's happening, that's like the best part of the game. And you're right. It did start out as like a 9 for me. I was like, oh my God, everything I wanted out of a sequel to Dying Light, because I really liked the first game. And then the longer you play, the more bugs, and then the shortcomings of the story become way more apparent in the second half of the game. And I was kind of just like, oh no.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And I hear you on the voice actor or the main character, because two things happened immediately. I was talking to my brother about this when I started playing. I was like, well, it sounds like he's doing like a Troy Baker thing. And then I realized what had happened was I was playing the Uncharted 4 remaster at the same time. And he is 1,000% doing Sam Drake, like down to the inflections of that. So it's not just Troy Baker; it's like a specific Troy Baker, and I can't get it out of my mind now. If you go listen to every line he says, it sounds like Sam Drake in Uncharted 4.
So I actually thought it was Troy Baker at the beginning, and then I realized it's an anime actor, and that's sort of his voice. I think it does. I watched some of the other stuff he's done, and I was like, oh, so this is just his voice. And in fact, the character Aiden, you don't really see him much, but when you do see him, he kind of looks like the voice actor too.
Oh, they made him look like him?
They just made it him the character.
Well, maybe Troy was doing him in Uncharted 4. I don't know, but it's
there
almost,
you go.
It's almost identical, especially if you're playing them at the same time.
Yeah. Kind of just a generic Caucasian protagonist is my
so it's got a lightly Southern, not enough to be offensive drawl and end of sentences, and it's exactly what Sam Drake brings to the party. So it's like, wow.
Not enough to be offensive. You know what's funny, Travis, is as you're talking through this, as it started out really high, and then as you experience more, you see the shortcomings of the story, more bugs, and your score goes kind of down by the time you finish it. It kind of harkens back to exactly what we said about finishing a game to get a full perspective for a review score. And what I know you've noticed is because you review games regularly as well, is there's often times where I put a review out with a score and I see so many people on social media say, I've got 4 hours into this. It's a 9 for me. And it's like, well, you know, you haven't gone through the arc that I've gone through with this game yet. Like, just wait. You know what I mean? Just
But let me play devil's advocate.
Sure.
Right. Okay. So professionally, I agree. You have a responsibility to play the whole thing. Right. But I am, you know, a 40-something person that has a limited amount of time. And to be honest with you, I think I get a lot more content than I need out of certain big open world games. Assassin's Creed series, Dying Light. I have no preconception that I'm going to see the second half that Travis doesn't like of this game. And so, you know, one of the things that's always floated through my mind is that, yeah, okay, if it's presenting 4 hours of a 9 to you, that's 2 movies. If it presents 10 hours of a 9 to you, you know, where is the value? Can you review a game for the experience that you're likely to have in your life? And I think you have to do it both ways. I think the professional that you're talking about has to 100% deliver. This is what the content is, the entire package, everything that Travis said about the back half. But I've long thought that, especially for a specific type of gamer, if I knew that I was getting 10 hours of a 9 at the front end, that's something I might be interested in regardless. And I've long thought there can be essentially a review process. It's like, here's the first dozen hours. Here's how it feels. That's all Rick's likely to play. Working around his family life and everything else is going to try. And then that'll go in the shelf and say, that's a good game. That is an A to me. And that's it. You know, so that's where I get stuck.
I don't think we're too far apart on this, really. I think there's plenty of room for what you described. People giving kind of full detailed impressions, their thoughts, what a game kind of consists of, especially some of these, as you said, 60, 80, 100-hour games, right? Where a lot of people just don't have time to finish them. I think there is a place for people to provide context of those games, maybe 10, 12, 15 hours in. Absolutely. The only hang up I have is that if you're going to call it a full review, a review of the whole package, as you alluded to, a review of the whole package and what you're getting in that package, you should play the whole game.
Yeah, I don't think you can review Dying Light 2 and say I only played 12 hours, but I think you can review the first 12 hours of Dying Light 2 and say
Agreed.
I think there's like Yeah, I think you would the caveat there would be you would have to base your entire system around doing.
Oh, this is the branding. Oh no, I've already run up website concepts on this bad boy. No,
yeah,
it's the first dozen hours. That's the site.
You could call it the caretaker's dozen.
There you go.
For somebody
the busy gamers review of the first dozen. No, I mean whatever it is, that's what I'm looking at, because I'm just noticing my own play patterns, right? Which is that. That's what I'm playing, and then I move on to the next thing, because I get to a dozen hours on a Dying Light, and Horizon will be out. I mean, there's just no question, right? And so, then I'll get a dozen hours of that, and the next thing will be out, and that's just what I do. And if I had a good time with it, great. That's what I'm.
I think that would be a very fun style of review. Just reviewing the busy persons. You're only going to play the first third. So how does that feel? How would for Dying Light? I think your odds of being an 8 or 9 are much higher. But as you learned yourself, that's also a gamble, because the game is unstable, and you can run into, you can be like you and run into glitches.
Well, literally, I talked to you 2 weeks ago. You're like, the first 50 hours you were talking about all this stuff. So like, you know what? I don't. If it's buggy later on, we'll make it work. And then, I mean, God, the first 3 hours was like, come on, game. I'm trying.
That is super unlucky. I've actually never heard anybody get bugs that early. Like the fact that it's
no spoilers. We don't need to spoil anything, but you're at a house and you have to get rid of the zombies. And like the very first one,
you just spoiled like 30 different games.
There's no, I've killed them all. I'm standing there. I'm like, well, okay. I got to turn on this generator, which is the second part of what the mission thing is telling you, even though the first part isn't checked off. It lets me in. I turn it on. No power comes on. I'm like, that's, to me, a hard crash is actually a little bit better than that, because I don't quite know whether I'm missing something or they are for an extra 10 minutes.
No, that the worst bug I had, in my opinion, and it was way worse than the hard crashes, was when I couldn't complete a side quest because a character wouldn't spawn that I needed to talk to complete it. That's way more frustrating, because I was looking for that character for like an hour before I realized he wasn't there. I was just walking around the same area, like, where is this dude? And then I found the place he's supposed to be, and you could hear him talking, but he wasn't there. Like, you could hear him going like, and like saying things. And I was like, this is where he is. He's not actually.
Well, see, it's got to be tougher for reviewers, because at some level, after it's been out a few moments, you can go and be like, is this working right? Like, what should happen? And you guys don't necessarily have that.
The reviewer's solution is that usually you have contact with the developer. And so in this case, I had a Discord, and I went there and I was like, hey, this guy isn't showing up. And they were like, damn, sorry, that's a bug. But one of the things that I did want to bring up for this review is
to clarify real quick, Travis. Clarify real quick. If you're IGN, you have direct contact.
All right, fine. Fine.
And Discord channels with developers and publishers. Oftentimes, when I'm reviewing a game, and if I run into an issue, I'm trying to figure out who I can DM on Twitter who may also be playing it. So I'll DM someone like Jez or someone.
So even when I was writing for small indie sites, I used to just like go and find their Discord, because usually Discord servers are public. So I would just, without asking anyone, I would just go and find the developers and contact them and just be like, yo, and they'd be like, who the heck is
their internal Slack channels, just popping in.
Yeah, I'm out there like finding these people. So I would just like find the reviewer and be like, hey, I'm reviewing your game, I have a question, and just like hit them up. But there is a debate going on right now, and I've been getting a ton of hate mail. It's fine. It's part of the job. I'm totally used to it. But my DMs are blowing up with people calling me like a Satanist and just like, being real mean, because I wrote a bad review of a game, or actually I wrote a good review of a game. I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Sevens are awesome. Sevens are where the weird stuff and the fun stuff lives. People enjoy your sevens.
I agree. 100%. I agree. But one of the things is people are saying, how can you review a game before it's out? It doesn't have a day one patch yet. It's going to fix thousands of bugs, all these things. And I have to say, one, if you play a game early, you play a game the day before it comes out and it has tons of bugs, and there's a day one patch that's supposed to fix 1,000 different things, which literally the developer said, hey, the day one patch fixes 1,000 bugs. The fact that you think the hubris behind thinking that you can fix 1,000 things in one patch and that's not going to break other things, and that it's going to just like see itself out is crazy to me. But also, like, it matters if the state of a game, like I'm not playing a completely different game than you. They were patching the game as I was playing it. And guess what? They're going to be patching it after you're playing it too.
Sure.
You might not experience the same bugs
I want them
as
to.
I do. Yeah, exactly. You would, that's the part of the service, right? But the whole conversation around like, oh, you shouldn't review a game until it's out or until it has the final version. If you're waiting for the final version of a game, you will be waiting forever. And you will never get a review for the game. And my job as a reviewer is to try to help the consumer make an informed decision about how to spend their money and how to spend their time. And that is, it's helpful to have that review before the game comes out, before they're asking for you to spend your money. And that's the goal. And sometimes we review games that technically aren't out yet. They're in preview, but the developer is asking you to pay for them. And so it's still worth saying, is this worth that money at this stage in the game? And then a year from now, when the game actually comes out, if it's still a relevant news topic, which it often isn't, but if it is, we'll re-review it. We've done that before for No Man's Sky. We've reviewed 3 times because that game has changed so much since it initially came out. So yeah, I just wanted to say on that one that I really think it's important that these early access reviews happen and they do help people. So I'm sorry that I gave the game that you loved and thought was going to be a 10 out of 10 a 7. I think one day it possibly could be a 10 out of 10, but right now that's just not my opinion. So,
and a lot of those criticisms are coming from people who are excited, right? And obviously haven't played it themselves.
Yeah,
right.
Yep.
And I get that.
Yep.
Like I was excited about Dying Light too. I still am. I really like it when it's not crashing on me.
It's a great game.
It's funny that you mentioned that direction for your reviews. I tend to get it the opposite way. I love Days Gone, for instance, talking about zombie games. And I get a lot of criticism for that on my channel or elsewhere because they say, well, how can you rate it so highly with all the bugs it had? And I say, I can only rate it on what I experienced. I got a lucky run. If you want to call it a lucky run, I'm not discounting what everybody else has said about it because I played it right when it launched. Yeah. But I didn't have any problems. I can't tell you that I did. I can comment and say, hey, other people have said that there are problems. But it's the same way with what you're describing with a patch. I can't give it a 9 because they promised me the stuff that I did experience is gone. That wouldn't be fair. And you see that you've seen that from other outlets and from other instances where you do appear to get reviews that are giving a little bit more credence to that notion of, oh, patch 1 will fix it all. Yeah. And some of those times they have to walk it back because it doesn't. Yeah. But I feel for you. And I certainly feel for you in terms of passionate community members that are asking you to fix the game you didn't make or commenting on your review and the bugs that it has. I can't even fathom the DMs that you get, Travis.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. The new thing, I think I told Ains this, but the new thing that's been happening to me is I'll write a review and then somebody will reach out to me on social media and tell me to fix my game.
Yes.
And I'm like, dude, you read my review where I said the game was broken and now you're reaching out to me to fix it? Like, do you not understand anything about how this works? Like, this is crazy. And the first time it happened, I was like, it's a fluke. And the second time it happened, I was like, that's weird. And then like the 6th time it happened, I was like, what is happening? Like, why does everyone think I'm a game developer? It was really weird.
That's insane.
Dan, you're going to say something.
Yeah, here's the thing. You don't go into a restaurant. They bring you like a raw piece of chicken and say, here, try that. Let me know what you think about it. Just try it. Give it a shot. And then you're like, well, it's not really cooked. But all right. You try it and you're like, okay, well, it sucks. And then they're like, well, listen, in a couple of days, we're going to cook it and season it for you. So you just need to, just understand
write a review as if it were cooked.
Right.
Because we know it's going to get cooked, right? So
right. It's going to get cooked. It's going to be really perfectly seasoned, juicy, tender. It's going to be all these things. But at the moment, this is what we want to know what you think, and people just and I said it to Travis, it just bothers me that, and then Travis apparently is the only reviewer at IGN. I don't understand that. It's like, well, IGN gave this game a Deathloop
Cyberpunk 10. A 9. Well, I didn't get Cyberpunk a 9. Like,
because they cloned Travis. There's 30 Travises that are out there right now, and they're writing reviews for IGN. Yeah.
Now wait a minute. All right. Okay. So I have to devil's advocate here, right? So if you're gonna take the audience and the ability to get out there of a large platform, you take on some of the fact that, for the most part, I think we refer to it as the platform's opinion. They trusted Travis to review X as a platform, whether or not that's warranted or not. Who knows with Travis? and they trust Mitchell to review something else. And that's an organization that should be vetting who it has. Now, I agree with you 1,000%. I hate it when it's like, well, Madden came out and it got an 8. What kind of world is this? It's like, yeah, okay.
Actually got a 6.
But did it? It got 6. All right, sorry. Well, you got a lot of years of Maddens. I'm sure one of them got an 8.
Probably.
So yeah, no, I hear you, but I do think it's okay to say GameSpot gave it a 9 and IGN gave it a 9. I'm not trying to deperson you, Travis.
No, I get it, and I think it makes sense when people compare the platforms, but you have to kind of just explain to them that the review is one person's opinion. That's all a review can ever be, and unless you're looking at a Metacritic score, and different people have different opinions. If I would have reviewed Cyberpunk, I would have given it a different review than Tom Marks gave it, who really liked it. But we also, we're different people. Does
IGN ever do a second opinion box if they have an editorial conversation about those? I used to like those.
Yeah, I actually can't remember. I feel like we used to do those, and I'm not sure that we do them anymore.
Yeah, just curious.
But we do re-reviews, especially now in the age of games getting tons of patches and updates. Our one caveat is that there still has to be a lot of people that care about the game for us to re-review it, right? And so No Man's Sky is a great example. You're running a business
too, yes. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, but at some point, like, people are like, "Oh, can you review this game that was broken that's fixed now?" And it's got like 9 players, and we're like, "No, it's just not,
So let me get to a couple of these comments because they're funny. And Dan touched on this one. So Coolco says, should you base the review on the actual game, though, and omit the game bugs from the score if potentially they would be fixed? The answer is no. Nope. Because there's no guarantee that those bugs will be fixed. We can only review what we're playing in the moment. And as Travis said, if they're updating the game as he's playing it, you can comment on that as well. But you can't play a game that has things that are impacting your play and just assume that it's not going to happen for other people. You have to write about and talk about what you experienced.
And I think some outlets actually do ignore bugs to a certain extent. I see it most often in outlets that have a print publication, because they'll get the game really early because they have to write the review in time to for it to publish in print. So Game Informer gave Dying Light 2 a 95, and I think that the 95 out of 100 is reflective of the fact that they probably experienced bugs and then ignored them because they had a super early copy of the game and kind of played on the assumption that those bugs would matter. So if you're that type of player, you should just read those outlets. If you are the type of person that always assumes that the bugs are going to be fixed, or you play games much later, outlets like that exist for you. And I think Game Informer is a pretty consistent one. They tend to sort of hand wave some of that because they're dealing with really early versions of the game. So
okay, there's another thing too we always talk about here. 7's not a bad game. Like,
I love 7s.
Yeah, 7 means it's a good game. People need to get over this thing that if it's not an 8 or higher, it's a bad game. I mean, we talk about that all the time.
I love 7s. I love 7s. And 7s are very often where some of the experimental stuff that doesn't quite work, but which is going to be amazing when they do it again or when someone else iterates on it. That's where they live. That's where some of that stuff is born. 7s are great. I have no problem with 7.
Yeah, they're good games that have flaws.
Yes.
That's all they are, and that's just what it is.
And the flaws may bother you more or less than someone else. So a 7 to Dan may be a 9 to me, and vice versa.
I mean,
someone else's opinion of a 7 could still be an incredible game to you.
People are so focused on like the school education version of grades that they can't actually use that education and figure out math, because math dictates that 7 is 2 above 5, which 5 would be average on a sliding scale. So it's just basic stuff that we just kind of need to move past as gamers, I think, like math. So we get to that
I think movies killed us on this. Movies are much better about using their full spectrum. You think of a 2.5 out of 5 stars. It's like, I understand that that's probably mediocre. Somebody might love it somewhere. You give a 5 to a video game, people are assuming it's going to burn your house down in some fashion.
It's true. Yes. Very true, which is sad. By the way, Jordan just showed up. He said, walking in late, agreed, bugs have been rough. Literally lost my entire day yesterday exploring the world and crushing zombies. So, yeah.
That's what I fear. That's what I fear. It's very hard to commit time to something if that's a possibility.
Yeah,
No. I think I think you're misinterpreting it. I think he's saying that he was engrossed in the game, not that he lost his save data.
Yes,
Oh,
he is.
yeah.
I did the same thing. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, I was.
Yeah, I think he's saying that the game is really good and that he didn't experience any bugs. But again, Jordan, again, Jordan, you're walking in late. But in my experience and the experience of the IGN reviewers, the bugs get worse the longer you play. So if you're not experiencing anything now, you might later in the game. And just imagine what would happen if tomorrow you lost all of your save data. Like, you'd probably be pissed and feel really bad about the game. And we had at least 2 contributors who that happened to. So it's it
would be very disappointing. But see, that's why you want to stay behind the patch curve. If you can play it slowly enough, they'll just get out in front of you. It's like riding a wave.
Absolutely. And there's also, like, in my review, the first thing I say when I get to the bug section is just if you have an aversion to bugs, wait 30 days, wait 60 days. I have confidence that they will fix these problems, but right now it's rough. And I just said that at the top of my review in the video version, and then a box out in the written version, and I left it. I didn't talk about bugs for the rest of the review, but yeah.
Well, as we've seen, like Dying Light 1, as we've said, is a game that's been tremendously supported. It's a fantastic game. So I have high confidence that Techland will continue to work on this, and it'll be an amazing game.
Well, I think they've got a winner there, and I think they probably know it. So there's reason to put the resources in it.
Of course.
And I'm sure that it's selling like gangbusters. I saw it was the #1 game on Steam, like the second it came out. So top selling game. So
all right. Why don't we jump over? That was a much longer discussion on this couple games and reviews.
This is my fault, right? You got to get used to having. I asked like 7 questions. I'll work on it.
Bitcast is now a 4-hour podcast.
No, we're not Iron Lording it. They do their own thing. We're not doing the 5-hour show here. Let's move over to the main topic of the week, which goes without saying, I think, is PlayStation's acquisition of Bungie. So I know that a lot of people have talked about this. Rick, I know you've done some videos on this already.
Yes.
Travis, I know you had a conversation on this already as well. So, but I figured we could kind of break down some of the key elements, similar to what we did with Xbox and Activision. For those who have been kind of living under a rock for some reason, PlayStation has agreed to, or there's an agreement to acquire Bungie for $3.6 billion. The most interesting aspects of this, which obviously I want to hear from you guys on, to me anyway, is the fact that Bungie will remain an independent subsidiary of Sony Interactive Entertainment. They will remain a multi-platform studio with the option to self-publish. They've been very clear about having what I guess they would call their continued freedom, despite being part of SIE now. And they are continuing, obviously, to maintain and update and continue with Destiny 2, while, of course, working on the new IP that they've been working on for some time. Now, before we get into the comments, I want to read this quote from Jim Ryan, obviously head of PlayStation and SIE, what he said about this, because I feel it's highly relevant to the conversation of being independent. This is an interview with GamesIndustry.biz, by the way. He said, "The first thing to say unequivocally is that Bungie will stay an independent multi-platform studio and publisher. Pete," meaning Pete Parsons, the CEO of Bungie, "and I have spoken about many things over recent months, and this was one of the first and actually easiest and most straightforward conclusions we've reached together. Everybody wants the extremely large Destiny 2 community, whatever platform they're on, to be able to continue to enjoy their Destiny 2 experiences, and that approach will apply to future Bungie releases." It can't really be much more clear, right? This is unequivocal. He says that point blank.
And I just, to back that up, they made that statement to their investors in their financial call, which is more legally relevant than Game Industry Biz. It is dyed and cast. It is in iron.
Exactly. And Bungie will operate autonomously within the Sony Interactive Entertainment organization, and they will continue to publish on other platforms. We get the importance of this. So I wanted to start with that because there's still people saying, well, Destiny will stay multi-platform, but their new IP will definitely not be on Xbox. I'm like, they can't make it any more clear. That's not what they're doing here.
Okay, so, well, for folks that don't know me, I do some mergers and acquisitions work. I'm a mergers and acquisitions attorney. Does venture capital and does these deals all the time. Please do check out the videos that I did. They're a couple hours long on the Bungie stuff over at Virtual Legality on my channel. But this is one of the most wild things I have ever seen in more than 15 years of doing this stuff. Because I think the baseline understanding, and I think why you get so many people online rejecting it like a bad organ as a concept, is that Sony is going to spend pretty close to $4 billion on what is not intuitive as to what they purchased, right? When you think about this normally, you think, okay, you buy a company, you're buying a certain amount of control. You're buying either exclusivity, you're buying the ability to tell them what to do, you're buying something when you buy that company. In fact, I've had that conversation across the table in my office with clients that are selling their company and don't want X, Y, or Z to happen to the thing after they sell it. And part of getting them to the table is understanding if you're going to get money, they're going to get something. And here, Bungie was adamant from moment one that they're independent. They're going to be multi-platform. They control their own destiny. And that's what they're doing with Sony. In fact, if you look at the way Bungie frames all of it, there's nothing about acquisition. There's nothing about being sold. It's always Bungie joins Sony. It's joins is their preferred verb in all of their press releases. And, we can break it down absolutely, because I think there's reasons why this happened, and there's reasons why it can make sense for both Sony and especially Bungie, who appeared to have the stronger leverage in these negotiations, to be frank. But when you talk about these things, it's so unusual to have something like this subsidiary be able to say, we don't have to follow orders after our shareholders collect $3.6 billion. And that's what I think people are having trouble with, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, understand, Sony is going to buy the company. Sony's going to be the only shareholder of Bungie. Sony's still going to have rights to the revenue. Sony's still going to have rights to actually make money from what Bungie does. The Bungie current shareholders are cashing out. They're liquidating their position in order to cash out, to have money. That's a good day. That's drink Mai Tais on the beach in Tahiti day for a lot of those people. And Sony is going to get that revenue generation. And then most importantly, and what we could talk about this, and then I'll stop because I'm sure you all have thoughts, is Sony's getting institutional know-how. Sony wants to move into another brand. Sony has made this very clear to its investors and to others. They want to do some other stuff that they didn't feel they had the people within their company to do. And one thing I would say about this is that you can reflect on this in comparison to the quotes we saw from Square Enix, Crystal Dynamics, and the Avengers in the last year. If you guys didn't see that story, President of Square Enix goes out and says, one of the reasons the Avengers project is a problem is we don't believe Crystal Dynamics really wanted to do a live service. We don't believe they really had the experience to do a live service, and we're going to re-examine what that is. Sony looks at it and says, we make single-player, over-the-shoulder, open-world adventure games at this point in our lifetime. We want to do live services. Their financial statements actually say we want to do 10 live service games in the next 3 years, and we don't actually have the institutional know-how to do that. So they look at it and say, yeah, you guys make Destiny. More importantly, you've cracked this code in some fundamental way, and we want to apply it across our entire enterprise. And so we could talk more about that. But I could talk for 20 minutes on this kind of thing.
You gave a good overview of the how interesting and maybe unique, right, the wording is around this merger. But at the same time, your latter point there was kind of fundamental, and a lot of the conversations I've had this week with others who are more attuned to what's going on here is exactly what you said. Institutional knowledge is a good way to put it. And Bungie are some of the leaders in this space. Some people would argue they are the leader in the space.
I think it's either Bungie or Epic. I mean, it just depends on which direction you want to go.
Yeah. And so it just, from a PlayStation perspective, what I said on Cast Co-op this week is no one is arguing about PlayStation's brand loyalty, their brand power, their IP quality, their capability to produce fantastic AAA games. But live service is not where they exist today. And they know what the evolution of the gaming industry is happening. And who better, if anyone, to lean on as you evolve your gaming development model than Bungie. It just seems to make a lot of sense in that arena. So, Travis, I'm going to go to you next because, for obvious reasons, you're our core Destiny guy here. You do Last Word. I'm sure you've had a lot of conversations this week since this news broke. Obviously touch on kind of your overall thoughts and the things that Rick mentioned as well.
I hate it. I hate this. And I think it's a really bad thing for Destiny and Bungie. I think it's a great deal for Sony. And like you guys said, to their point, like the institutional knowledge that they're gaining as a company, and kind of what they benefit from, I see as being a very, very strategic and masterful acquisition for them. I don't think that it's going to work out the way that they think it's going to work out in the long term, the managing this sort of independent relationship. I think it'll work probably in the short term, but if Bungie's history of how they work with other large organizations they tend to get in bed with is any indication, and also just the weirdness of it, the fact that they're claiming to be independent, and that over time that is probably going to be eroded as Bungie employees stop thinking of themselves as Bungie employees and more like PlayStation employees, and kind of that institutional history starts to get eroded. They'll just end up being the same organization, and then at that point, who knows if they'll care about making multi-plat or that sort of thing. But my big problem with this acquisition, and the reason I think it's not good, is because Sony benefits a lot. And I think if you're a Sony fan, if you have shareholders there, there's obviously reason to be excited about it, because they're getting this killer live services team that I think is going to help Sony make games. Sony also announced this week that they want to make 10 live service games by 2026. So I totally get what that's doing there. But on the Bungie side, there's a risk of there being a bit of a brain drain on the Bungie team and from the Destiny specifically project, because they're going to be going to work on these other things. And the employee retention money, which we can get into how that's kind of not really, I mean, I think you did a video on it, Hoeg, but that's sort of what people think. It's actually just to keep employees at the PlayStation organization, the Sony organization, not at Bungie necessarily, right? And so they don't have to continue to work on Destiny for that to benefit them. The other thing is that if you look at the messaging at why this acquisition happened, all of PlayStation's messaging from that is, this is all about live services. This is all about us expanding what we do. And then if you look at the Bungie side about it, you know what they say? This is all about TV and movies.
I was gonna say, I do.
And it's not about video games. In fact, they don't mention making Destiny better as one of the reasons that they made this move. And so for people who think that, all of a sudden Destiny, all of its problems are going to get solved because now it's part of this big corporation and they got this influx of cash, they didn't really read the room, I think. They didn't read this press release and see what's happening, because everybody who plays Destiny knows how many damn problems this game has. And we've gone through so many iterations of the game, and so we've gone through so many growing pains, whether it was them leaving Activision, them finding their first footing as a live service, them removing content, as Hoeg likes to get on a soapbox about with the content vault, all of these problems, and then just like the game struggling over the years to kind of be consistent and pump out content at a level that players are okay with, and all that stuff. So many problems. Every Destiny player knows this. And if Bungie had said, hey, this acquisition is about fixing all those problems and making Destiny realize its full potential, I would be 80% happier with this decision. I would still be upset, but I'd be 80% happier. But they didn't say that. They said, we sold out so that we could drop a hot single on Sony Music. That's what they said, right? They said, we want to make movies, we want to make TV. To me, this is Bungie's 2013 Xbox press conference moment where they just said TV, TV, TV. The messaging was completely tone deaf, and I hate it. I hate that. I also I'm okay when companies like Activision get acquired, because they're big companies that I see as kind of, they're the establishment, and if they get eaten up, who cares, right? That, especially with Activision, they were at sort of a fail state in the way I see it. Like they kind of needed to get killed, and that was the best outcome I could think of, is that they get swallowed up, right? But Bungie, I viewed as like a challenger. They're like up and coming. They're that second tier people that could one day live to replace Bethesda as a large independent company, or replace the Activision void that was left. And I kind of, to me, they were the chosen ones. I've been a Bungie fan for a really long time, and I wanted to see them kind of blow up and become that level of a company, and seeing them cut off before they could do that, and sort of giving up on the messaging that they were giving their fans for years at this point, where they said, we want to be independent, we want to grow ourselves organically, and then just see them completely bait and switch and drop all that messaging and be like, just kidding, now we're part of Sony. This was heartbreaking to me, seeing this news for a ton of reasons. The messaging around Bungie, the I think disingenuous messaging about them being independent and completely ignoring the fact that there are definitely going to be changes to how the company runs, especially in the long term. The movie, TV, music bullshit. The fact that Bungie is no longer going to be the indie company that they said they wanted to be. All of these reasons, I felt like a gut punch to me, to be honest. And I'm surprised I'm the only one who seems to feel this way. Every show I've been on, everybody's told me, no, this is great news, Travis. Like it's great for Bungie, it's great for Sony. I just disagree.
So let me do one thing real quick first before we continue this conversation. I did admittedly completely miss a super chat, so I have to apologize.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
And I want to throw that up. Cerebral Paul in the house, who always supporting us. So as you can see, this was a little while ago in the conversation.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Morning, all great.
He wants to take this back now.
Travis review helped me temper expectations. So thank you.
About Dying Light 2. So yes. Thank you very much, Paul. Sorry about that.
Glad to hear it. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for reading.
I guess what that means is our chat is flowing really well, and I'm not used to keeping up with it at this speed. So I'll get better at that. I apologize.
To the moon.
There is someone in the chat, by the way, Travis, who said, I completely agree with Travis. Where is he? There he is. Jupiter X119. Yes, I agree.
It happens every once in a while. Every 100 years, I get one person agrees with me.
Yeah. So I already said a long piece, so I'll let the others go, but I do have a couple of positions to take against Travis. I'm sure everybody's surprised. I'll wait on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say so Dan, I know you well enough to know you're not a big Destiny player. No. You don't really tie yourself to personal investment in these companies. You just really focus on what's delivered. So as you listen to Hoeg and Travis talk through this, where are you at with this?
I'm more of the I'm not. I've been this way forever. I don't like this consolidation crap. I don't, because I can see where it's potentially going. And I know we talked about it when Hoeg was on last time, but it still kind of freaks me out a little bit because you may get to a point where you've got, I know Tencent is out there, but I don't even know what they're doing half the time. And what's the other one? The starts with an E. Embracer, is that the other
Embracer
one?
Group?
Yes. Yeah. And these companies are, they all got this slice of the pie. They're doing whatever they're doing. I don't care for it. That being said, I don't care about Destiny. So it's interesting to hear from two different sides, kind of. I know Travis is a humongous fan. My son is actually a huge Destiny player on PC. He loves it. He's got the Witch Queen box set coming. He's super excited.
Nice.
He's been playing for a while. His initial reaction was, "This sucks." And then he kind of got it. He kind of started reading into it a little bit more. He's like, "Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be fine." And he worries about maybe exclusive content and stuff like that, because he said something about some content being exclusive to one platform, and I can't remember what it was, but it was a very powerful weapon that, I don't remember.
It had some exclusive weaponry that lasted for an extended period of time,
right?
Which
2 years.
Yes.
Yeah. And he said, short of that, he's like, I don't have no idea what to think. He's like, I'm going to keep playing it because I like playing the game. And, he's kind of detached like myself. I'm more worried from a consolidation standpoint. I just don't, I don't know where this is going. I question what the gaming landscape in 10 years is going to look like from
it's going to be weird.
It's going to be super weird. And, I don't know, man. This is such a weird acquisition too, because it's like you guys said, it's just like, okay, what, everybody, goes straight from when the Bethesda deal happened. Oh, these are going to be all exclusive. They're not. I mean, they came out and said it right out of the, it's something that I've never seen. It's not what you're used to with the acquisition stuff. So I don't know if that's good or bad. I really don't. It's just one of those things where no clue.
The exclusive part is interesting, but we have actually seen certain times when that's happened, especially with Microsoft's acquisition of Minecraft.
Sure.
What's weirder is the admonitions about the future, right? Like it's understandable to say we're not going to break up Destiny 2. In all honesty, that would have been a silly strategic move.
Sure.
To break up Destiny 2. It's the next thing and the next thing, and we have independent publishing rights. Bungie said more than what we just said in this video. We have full creative control. And it's like that's mind blowing. So just to be clear, if Sony Interactive Entertainment is making a space shooter featuring gorillas, and it just so happens that that's what Bungie wants to make, and Sony gets on the phone and says, I think it would be great if we didn't both make space gorilla shooters. Bungie, according to their press release, according to everything that we've heard, says, yeah, no, that's what we're into now. And Sony, thanks for the $4 billion a while back, but that's what we're going to do. That's crazy. And I think Travis is right that you have institutional kind of takeovers from a cultural standpoint, but at least at the highest level, what they are describing, and we can't see it because we probably never will see it because it doesn't necessarily have to be filed publicly, is a contractual obligation. Is that Sony will have agreed as the shareholders of Bungie not to take out the board of Bungie and not to question their creative choices, which is amazing if you're Bungie. And it suggests that Bungie had a lot of leverage in these negotiations. Now, I agree with Travis. I believe in my video, I talk about their wanting to be Marvel, wanting to have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and questioning whether or not they have the IP to actually do that.
And I describe it as, oh my God, the story's the worst part of Destiny. Why would you want to make TV shows on it? It's crazy.
And I describe it as either visions of grandeur or delusions of grandeur, depending on which way you want to come at it. But I tend to lean towards delusions of grandeur. And it seems part of these conversations with Sony saying, we know you want to be independent. We're willing to give you independence, which at that point, if you're Bungie, say, okay, we're listening. And we think we can make you the next big star on Sony Records and Sony Pictures and Sony Television and lunchboxes and comic books and little tiny, Savathun bears at the Build-A-Bear, whatever we got, we're going to make you Marvel. And you could see in their press release this concept of going, oh yeah, Marvel in 05 wasn't anything, and 08 swings around. We can do that. We can be Marvel. And Sony got their ear, and I think it's somewhat crazy. I don't think Bungie can do that. Although as I said in my videos, I'm always for ambition. Go nuts. See if you can do it. I don't quite see the negative ramifications that you do, Travis, because I think they won the negotiation. I think
they did for sure. I just think that their entire reason for negotiating and selling was bullshit. I just think it was a terrible move.
The reason for their negotiating and selling is they have 3.6 billion reasons. I mean, that's the answer to that story.
Yeah. There you go.
Everybody's for sale at a big enough number. I mean, that's the truth. You don't have to think about it that way. But Bungie is independent and wants to be independent, and they valued that internally at $2 billion. Whatever. And you pass that threshold, and then you say, okay, now we're talking about what the terms are. So the only thing I wanted to disagree with you on at all there was the notion that Bungie didn't say they were going to be enhancing their products. I mean, the last line of their press release is effectively the most immediate change you will see is an acceleration in hiring. If this speaks to you, we're hiring across all disciplines for Destiny 2 and our worlds beyond. That to me is them saying this should be something that you can look forward to as content because we're going to be able to throw more resources at it. That's what it was designed for. You don't have to agree with them. You don't even have to believe they're telling you the truth. But I do think they at least had a hand wave towards this is going to make your game better. I think that's in that press release.
Yeah, I think it probably is a hand wave. It's definitely not the headline. It's not the reason that they kind of highlighted for selling their company. And it's also they've been hiring like gangbusters for a long time because they were also independently raising money. They raised like 350 million, I think it was, in the last 6 months and stuff like that. So this is sort of like an overall trend, but they kind of told everyone that they were just going to be raising money and building out their company and all this stuff, and then they were going to remain independent and that sort of stuff. And this is sort of a reversal of it, although they do have some independence, at least for
now. I mean, there's going to be more resources from Sony, and I think the other part of the story that,
but I think it might go the opposite way. I think Bungie might end up providing more resources to Sony because they're doing this for the brain trust of Bungie. And I see if they want to do 10 live service games, I could see a lot of Bungie people getting pulled into just greater Sony, studios and starting to work on projects that aren't even really Bungie studio games. And that's what worries me.
It's possible, but Sony's dream world there is that they want it to metastasize. They want you to train the 3 guys at Sony Santa Monica, and they don't want to pull from what's working at Bungie. That, in an ideal world, you're not wrong that sometimes that world doesn't exist, and that can happen. That you can have that brain drain. But I look at it and say, the win here is on Bungie's side. Sony clearly didn't have the leverage in these negotiations. You can ask why. Part of that is live services. Part of that I do think is Game Pass. Part of that is looking at whatever Spartacus is going to be and saying, well, if Call of Duty isn't going to be on it, which the one thing we can be sure of is that if Call of Duty gets sold to Microsoft, it can be on Sony's platforms, but it's not going to be on their Game Pass. Then we need something in the shooter genre that's going to work and attract people. And who else is better at shooters than Bungie? And so that puts Sony in a position where they're spending $4 billion, which on its face doesn't make a lot of sense to analysts that are used to looking at just assets and EBITDA, right? You saw Michael Pachter come out this week and say they vastly overpaid. And I can see how you get to that, right? The revenue from Destiny. Yeah. Well, the revenue from Destiny, the assets. So the financial analysts in America are used to looking at, here's the revenue generation. Let's take it out for 10 to 15 years. What does that look like? What should the multiple be? And then you arrive at $1 billion or what have you, right? Sony, being a Japanese company, looks at things slightly differently, one of which is that synergy concept, one of which is that institutional know-how, which says, hey, if we can get 3 Apex Legends out of this thing by getting Destiny's folks, then this thing pays for itself fivefold, right? EA bought Respawn for $455 million. You think they're happy about that transaction, even though that looked ludicrously highly priced when, Titanfall 2 isn't selling anything, Titanfall isn't doing much. It looked pretty highly priced when it happened. And EA said, yeah, that Apex Legends looks pretty good, which is another part of the story as it is, which is we know from the press release and what Sony released, every indication is that whatever the next big thing is from Bungie is pretty darn close, like announcement pretty soon. And Sony got to see it and say, well, we're going to evaluate that in the purchase price that we pay. And if they think they've got an Apex Legends plus success, then 3.6 billion becomes a lot more understandable, a lot faster. Than it might
I think I agree with you, Hoeg, that Bungie won the negotiation. I just think that Sony is going to win. Sony wins by what they're getting from this deal, like in terms of dollars kind of already spent, right? Like they're gaining a ton as a company, and I don't think Bungie's gaining a ton for their game. I think they're offering a lot to Sony, and then what they're getting in return is they get to have an anime now, and I just don't, to your point, I would just like to savagely agree with you about the MCU thing. I think it is a colossal misuse of their time, because the difference, people like to draw correlations between like Star Wars and between like The Witcher and all these other things. And the difference between those properties is that the thing that kicked it off, the thing that started it, were really good. Star Wars movies were really good, and they said, okay, let's make comic books and TV shows and books and all that stuff. The Witcher books were incredible, and so they said, let's make video games and movies and yada yada. Destiny's story has never been good, and it's one of its weakest parts. And in order to make it good, they have to add these grimoire entries, and it's super hard to follow. And I just think that you can't win by making a TV show or a movie, because if the movie's good, then people go, oh wow, the story was so good in that movie, let me go play that game, and they're immediately disappointed because none of that is going to be in the game, right? It's going to have this cognitive dissonance, or it's just like, what the hell's going on? And then if the movie's bad, right, which is always a risk, then it just hurts the property further.
At Sony Pictures, yes.
Uncharted looks amazing.
Sony Pictures are bad. Yeah.
Did you just say Uncharted looks amazing?
Sarcastically.
Okay,
he
thank
was
God.
being sarcastic as heck.
No, so that's the funny part when I'm doing my thought experiments on the Bungie negotiations. It's like you can just imagine Sony rolling in and being like, look at this Uncharted. Look at what we did here. It's like, oh, that's not going to win me over to signing up with you from those trailers. But hey, no, I agree with you entirely. You start with something good and then you work off of that. I also, though, have a lot of experience, unfortunately, with CEOs and high-level executives that have the delusion of grandeur kind of concept, which is we're not just a video game company, right? What did they describe it? It's like a multimedia entertainment empire is what they want. And it's like, okay, great. That's great if you can get it. What are you basing it on? You're going to go make an Oni cartoon? We'll see if that works out for you. I'd love to see. It's some
probably the new property they haven't announced yet, would be my guess. So
I would say that if, like most of this story, it's possible that there's more marketability in whatever the next big thing is. And that's what they're working on. But I think it's mostly Sony whispering sweet nothings into their ear. Do you realize if you sell to us We have all of these people. We'll get you in the room with the folks that produce our movies, with the people that make our TV. And at the same time, remember, these negotiations are taking place, Halo is preparing to come out on Paramount Plus, right? So they're looking at
Halo was good before they did a TV show. That's all I'm saying. Destiny
it is, but from Bungie's perspective, right? That's the one that got away. That's the IP they lost. And they're looking at it and being like, well, clearly we're master storytellers. We can have a Bungie cinematic universe. It's about damn time, isn't it, Sony? And Sony says, yes. Our frequent movie success is going to take you to the promised land, Bungie. I see that playing out exactly like that. And I do think it's illusions of grandeur.
Totally agree. And I think Bungie's eyes are bigger than their stomach on this one. And they're going to get in real trouble if they try to build outward and make the story in Destiny retroactively good by all these things around it that are good. And
well, you say they'll get in trouble as an institution. That's probably right. The people are cashing out. I mean, like that.
Oh, for sure. They're good. They're good. Yeah. 100%.
They got paid, and then maybe they're masters of the universe. So it's like they won that negotiation. Give us our $3.6 billion, and then we'd love to be Marvel. And yeah, if that accrues to you, we'll just take your normal bonuses for how great we are. And if it doesn't, well, you know what? You bought the risk. We didn't.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, they benefit from everything.
Hold on, just give me a second here, guys.
Sure.
Because I'm my head's hurting. What did Sony get out of this then that they couldn't have done by hiring some of those people at Bungie away? That
I think it was an AccuHire hire.
Yeah,
I mean, it was an AccuHire hire. Yeah, move.
As opposed to just getting because it sounds like they paid $3.6 million or $1 billion. I'm sorry, for consulting, and then some.
Well, understand that they get what Bungie gets, right? So whatever Bungie was functioning on in terms of revenue, they can't control it, but that's accruing to them now. So, a couple $100 million from Destiny, whatever the next big thing is. I truly believe it's a live services game that they think is Apex Legends Plus. I really do think that they think that there's something of value there that'll accrue almost instantaneously, because a lot of this doesn't make sense at that price without that. But they also believe in the synergies. So yeah, you say consulting, but what I try to tell people is you can't just take a big pot of money and make people manifest in front of you. You can't put the people that have the skill set that you need with the team coordination that they need for something like live services, not to mention back end stuff, right? Sony's bad at the meta stuff and talking to the community about and working through live services that way. There's a ton of back end stuff that Bungie has solved pretty well, right? For the most part, Destiny has a lot of problems in how it operates, but it functions in a way that we don't really worry about it, and Travis can correct me on this, as not working in fundamental aspects of what they're choosing to do. And that's behind the scenes. It just works, but that's really, really important to developing that kind of goodwill. So I think Travis is right. They bought the whole company to be that kind of consultants, as you say, but that's because that's what makes sense. And it's not that unusual in tech. If you look at a lot of companies,
we call it AccuHiring in the tech world. You buy it for the people, basically.
And it's for doing something that you don't feel is one of your core competencies at your place of business. Sony looks at what they're doing. They look at where the market's going. They say the revenue lives in live services right now. Love it or hate it. I don't love it, right? I love single player narrative games, but that's where it lives. And you're not doing your job if you don't try to get into it. What's the quick is important here. What's the quickest and most substantial way that you can get that knowledge into your institution? And they have $3.6 billion to do it. And I think we're going to talk about it, but it's not $3.6 billion up front. And so Sony did win an important concession as part of that story that got, I don't want to say misreported, got interestingly reported around this week as to what in the world was happening with what I look at as a purchase price holdback, which we can, of course, talk about.
$1.2 billion, which they're calling employee staying benefits, which is
and they're going to get to expense it. They're going to get tax benefits. Bungie didn't get that. Bungie didn't win on that deal term, and that's what I was trying to explain to people. Generally speaking, this is pretty easy to understand. You'd prefer to have the $1.2 billion in your pocket than have to wait for it for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, you can segue
Sony's out here on a payment plan for acquiring Bungie.
Well, in a different context, we would call it seller financed, right? You see seller finance deals all the time, which essentially says, I don't got it right now, but we're going to give you a promissory note for the value, and we're going to pay you on a quarterly basis, or we're going to pay you in a yearly and then a balloon, whatever it looks like. That's seller financing, because seller essentially has the equity in the company, and they're saying, all right, we'll accept it for a while. because we know you can't, maneuver this much cash. And Sony is not Microsoft. Sony is cash, not strapped exactly, but cash conscious. And so actually moving $1 billion down a few years and not having and getting to treat it as an expense of actually operating their companies.
And there's a cliff too. They might not have to pay it all.
Well, I mean, yes, it's going to be actually based on people staying. Some people won't. And so it won't be a full 1.2. That's definitely true.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think, honestly, I think from an acquisition standpoint, the fundamentally what Sony gets out of this, what Bungie gets out of this, and the methodology behind it, I think we've covered that. So if you want to just go ahead and segue into the specifics on the 1.2 billion versus the remaining 2.4 and how those differentiate, we could touch on that. I don't know if it's a hugely interesting topic from the deal perspective.
Hey, don't make fun of Hoeg's entire business model right now. Come on, man.
Just so
his entire business model is not interesting content. That
oh my god! All right, scoreboard on subscribers here, Travis. Let's go.
I said make it interesting, but it's not an interesting topic.
No. It's so funny, right? Because I try to title these videos, and one of the original titles was something like understanding retention plans and bonuses. I was like, I wouldn't even watch that. I'm trying to figure out how to say it more interestingly. And then somebody, this is a joke. This is only for here. Somebody had commented on how boring my thumbnail was when I did a question and answer. I'm trying some new things. I streamed a question and answers to my original Bungie video this week. I think it went pretty well, but I just had a question mark on it. And somebody was complaining about the boringness. And so when I did the retention bonuses video, I found a picture of a retention pond, royalty free. And it's just the top of my video. And I can't imagine anything more boring than it's just a pond. If you go look at the thumbnail to that video.
Honestly, Hoeg, I think it's part of your brand. And I did not mean that as an insult at all. I actually think it's impressive that have you guys ever done this? You click on a Hoeg YouTube video and you're like, all right, I don't need to see 40 minutes of this. I just want the high level. I'm just going to watch 10 minutes of this video. And then you end up watching the whole thing. It's crazy. Like it's hard to just watch the intro to a Hoeg video. Partially because the preamble is. I was going to say, because
I knew you were going to say because they're so long, the substance hasn't even hit.
Yeah. No, not just that, but like you get into it and then you bring up the next topic and you're like, all right, but I do want to know about that too. And so it's very.
No, so I mean, the basics of this are Sony has a financial report on Groundhog Day, February 2nd. And part of this is they put all their financials out there and they give a speech. They talk to their investors and they do a really good job of summarizing it, putting bullet points out there. This gets grabbed by journalists and it gets reported in a couple places as essentially like Bungie wins the deal. Well, let me back up a step. The most important part is 3.6 billion is the top line number that Sony puts out there. And in their own press release, they say that's purchase price and committed employee incentives, I want to say, is the phrase that they use, which there's some ambiguity around, but it means retention bonuses, as we later find out. And so I pointed that out in my first video. I said, that's weird to comment on, right? Because behind the scenes here, just so that your viewers know, or our viewers know, is that this happens in every single deal. You do not want to purchase a company and walk into an empty storefront, walk into an empty headquarters. What you are getting is the creative minds here when you're buying a creative company. So you better believe that certain key employees at ZeniMax got retention bonuses and retention agreements as part of that deal. You better believe that that'll happen at Activision as well. Microsoft doesn't mention it because for the most part, these are usually about 1% of the deal price, right? So it's not an insubstantial amount of money when we're talking about these deals. Yeah, the deals in the stratosphere. But what happened with Sony is they put out in their financials, hey, we're going to have to, and this is on their accounting slide, which is where I think people get a little bit more confused. We're going to have to pay $2.4 billion up front, and then there's $1.2 billion for employee shareholders that'll be deferred over what looks to be 3 years. They say it's over a number of years, and 2/3 of it will be gone in 2. We could do our own math there. Looks like it's a 3-year retention plan that they've put together. But what that got reported on is Sony's being ultra generous to Bungie employees. Bungie bent them over a table and got more money here. And I think what people miss in how that works is that they really believe $3.6 billion is the purchase price. That's how it's presented. 33% of that they're holding back. They're saying, well, we're really worried that this isn't the value that we need if we don't get, frankly, at least 3 years of work out of you people. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to hold $1 billion, and we're going to dole it back out to you, provided that you're still with the company, you're still performing services for us after time. To my mind, just based on the outside looking in, it's the one Sony obvious win that we can see here, which is, all right, we'll give you your independence. We'll pay you $3 billion plus for a company that has one property right now. And all we ask is we are going to hold that for a bit, because what's really important is that this is a talent acquisition contract. It isn't even a Destiny contract. And so that's what Sony did. That's where people get confused. It's not Sony being generous. It's Sony being hardball. This was one of their negotiation stances. It's not a win for Bungie. It's Bungie saying, okay, that makes sense. We believe we're going to be there for 3 years. We believe all our people are going to want to do this. That makes sense to us. That's the value of our company. You don't see reference to milestones. Sometimes you see in those retention bonuses, you have to release this game. It has to do this revenue. It does this kind of thing. You don't see reference to that in the Sony financial statements. What they told their investors was that they felt this would all be time accrued. 2/3 of it would be gone at the 2-year mark. And so what we can take is that they deferred payments, a promissory note, for 3 years, or at least on an annual basis for that 3 years throughout the period. That's all it is. I don't know whether that's interesting to folks or not, but one of the things that virtual legality exists for, and I jump on, is if I see things getting reported in a way that I feel is at least misleading. And I don't like to, this stuff is weird and tricky and bizarre. And so I always try to give quotes when people ask and love me, but also I do those videos when I say that this is fundamentally wrong in terms of which direction this was going. And so I try to correct that when I see it.
Yeah. And
no, it's good clarity. For the audience, and I think that's exactly kind of what we were talking about, is hopefully that, you've just provided some insight. This conversation has provided some insight that you won't find elsewhere. That's the point, right? So,
well, to be fair, in my professional career, I've never dealt with $1 billion holdback, but yeah, that's what it is. And you can tell, as I said, when it's a 33%, it's not that they won 33% bonuses. It's that the purchase price is being held back. I mean, it's clear as day to me, but I understand how folks can read it the opposite way. Because if you think, they agreed on a 2.4 is, I think is right, $1 billion purchase price, then Bungie somehow extracted another $1 billion too. It looks that way, but that's not.
So here's a question,
anything.
Hoeg.
Yeah.
If the Activision Blizzard deal had a 1% employee holdback, right? Like a employee, is that more money than the 1.2? Because the deal is so much bigger.
If I'm not mistaken, it would be 700 million.
700 million. So it's like it's kind of close though, even at 1%.
Yeah, it is kind of close. Am I doing that right though? I mean, it's 10% would be 7 billion, give or take. So I think 1% 700.
Yeah, isn't it typical to be 2 to 3% though? So that deal might not be 1%. It might be more. I don't know.
Generally speaking, when the deals get bigger, the percentages get smaller, because as a real money in your pocket, there's not a big difference between $1 million and $1.2 million. You get to the $1 million, they're substantially motivated to stay. So as the deal size gets bigger for all the assets, the budget for retention bonuses goes down. But yeah, it could be 2%. We don't know what they negotiated. Generally speaking, I think it's almost always between 1 and 3.
Gotcha. By the way, Dano says now he wants a shocked or angry face Hoeg for his thumbnail.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Keep the legalese. It's your brand.
So I think I have 750 some odd videos on my channel. I don't think my face is on any of them. People sometimes get confused.
You got to do the explosion on the side, and
I've used the red arrow once. I think I used the red arrow once on a football video.
The red arrow,
yeah. But no, I don't have my face on, which is interesting because I'm also not appearing on my channel very often, because I like to do it without the facial work, without the video. And sometimes I use the subject photo in my thumbnails, and people are like, "Oh, I thought you looked different." I was like, "That's Bobby Kotick. Do you think I'm Bobby Kotick?" No, I don't have his bank account. However you feel about him. Like, no, that's not me. Have you not seen Moneyball?
That's you. That's
funny. So I do get those comments from time to time. It's like, oh,
you should just put the hat. That should be your logo. Just the hat that you always wear on the side of the thumbnail. There you go.
Yeah, I'll break out the hair at some point. People think I'm bald. It's no, I just
The
like to
hair
brand.
reveal. We got to get
Yeah.
a hair reveal from Hoeg. That'd be great.
I just like to brand. I've been doing this. I've been out on my own for 6 years. I just like to have things with brand on it.
It's great. It's good. Nothing wrong with that.
All right, guys.
I know something about brand myself.
Yes, you do. You have a good brand. I mean, it makes you dress up more often than you probably would otherwise, but it's a good brand.
So we've kind of covered again, spent quite a bit talking about PlayStation, Bungie. Is there any other thought before we jump into our other core topics from the week you want to add?
No, let's move on.
Travis, by the way, there were several people that said they agreed with you, so that's you may want to.
I'm happy to hear that. It's apparently it's just the Destiny community that disagrees with me.
Yeah, you may want to screenshot this and save it for future reference. Because
I'm gonna have it framed.
I haven't heard that take before. I think that's very interesting. I like it.
All right, guys. So we got this week. I'm gonna stay on PlayStation for the time being because we got the state of play presentation for Gran Turismo 7, and we also got the developer presentation for Ghostwire Tokyo, which, funny enough, made by Mango Gameworks, which is now going back to acquisitions, is now an Xbox company. But this is a game that was already agreed upon to be PlayStation 5 exclusive for a time. And that game is now
first
coming on.
Japanese Xbox studio. If I'm not
I was going to say a notably Japanese studio for everyone that keeps DMing me about whether American companies can buy Japanese studios. I might have to do a video.
Just, Japanese studios tend to not like to be sold to non-Japanese companies. So
yeah, I mean Shinji Mikami at that, right? Creator of Resident Evil, so his studio. So I wanted to touch on both of these because they're both coming out in March 4th for Gran Turismo 7, March 25th now for Ghostwire Tokyo. They're obviously vastly different games. We've joked before, obviously, Travis, about being a car guy, and what I saw at Gran Turismo, I don't know if any of the three of you are highly interested in this, but Gran Turismo holds a special place in our hearts, car guys' hearts, right? When it came out on PlayStation 1, it legitimately revolutionized racing video games. And GT1 and GT2 are some of the all-time class. I still have my original copies of those games because they just hold a special place. Now, over the past several years, GT is I don't want to say fallen off because GT Sport's a very good game nowadays. It grew into a good game, but their releases have been very far apart. They haven't always landed with the significance of the early GTs. But what I'm seeing out of 7 looks fantastic. It looks to be that full Gran Turismo experience of yesteryear finally back at the forefront of racing video games. And I'm hugely, hugely excited for it. I don't know if any of you guys are looking forward to this as well.
I have to be honest.
I would love it. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say I have to be honest that I think Horizon is basically where my racing games live.
A lot of people like that.
Yeah,
a lot of people.
So Gran Turismo always, well, at least recently, strikes me as a somewhat cold take on racing compared to Horizon. I usually describe as a party in a box. You go, you chill, you listen to good music, you race against a plane or a cruise ship or whatever it is you're doing. And that's
cruise ship.
That kind of makes me where I live. That's just, hey, look out for the next Horizon. You don't know. And so I respect Gran Turismo more than I like it at this point, but I totally agree with you in Gran Turismo 1 and 2. That's what back in the day, before I was a lawyer, I worked at Electronics Boutique, and I worked at Electronics Boutique for the release of Gran Turismo 2. And that was the one where I would get freaking shouted at by people coming in and saying, where's Gran Turismo 2? And I remember that because my response used to be like, I can't just make it appear. I'm not hiding it in a drawer. We don't have any. I'm very sorry that you failed to purchase Christmas presents.
I really love to see some photos of electronics store.
I don't know if I have photos. Beautiful. I'll look. It's it's that era. It's the late 90s.
Great. Oh, to be sold a copy of Grand Theft Auto or Gran Turismo 2 from Richard Hoeg would be great.
That's right. If I had one. See, this is the angry parents would come in and be like, it's not my fault. It's December 23rd. We do what we can for you.
Right. I loved the old Gran Turismos. Those were actually my first racing games. And aside from, the arcade ones where you got the wheel and all that. And I also basically learned to drive from those games. Doing those driver's license tests was incredibly helpful in understanding. It was something I never understood about cars. is that they move when you do nothing. Like when they're in drive, they just like go forward on an automatic car, you know, and then you have to like tell it to not move. Like that to me was like mind boggling. Like the idea, I just always assumed that the car doesn't move by default and then you hit the pedal and it moves, but it's like, no, it moves on its own. And then you have to like tell it to not move, which to me was like, what? Why would you build it that way?
See, I want a Tie Guy Travis driver's license exam that features a glowing endpoint where you have to drive it as fast as you can and skid to a stop within it as his driver's exam. Yeah,
you actually just idled the entire way.
But yeah, I really liked Gran Turismo, and then kind of like Wayne said, the series sort of fell off for me. I also just think that Forza Motorsport, which is also kind of a simulator more than an arcade racer like Forza, does a better job at a lot of the stuff Gran Turismo is trying to do. Especially the thing I think it gets so well is like the warmth. Like if you play a Forza Motorsport game, they feel like warm, like love letters to like racing and cars, and you just feel like happy there. Whereas Gran Turismo is trying to be like sexy and cool, and I just don't think it has worked really at all. It's like the warmth of Forza Motorsport has just been so much better. So I would love to see Gran Turismo return to form, and I also think that we could use the competition, frankly, in the racing space. I think the Sims space has sort of been monopolized by Forza Motorsport for a while, and I think it would be nice to give them a kick in the pants and see if they can up their game. And I would love that. So I'm excited for it. I think the reveal and everything they've showed so far is cool, but I have my doubts for sure about it actually pulling it off just because of their track record recently.
Yeah, and Forza, Turn 10 working on the Forza Motorsport kind of reboot, if you will, for next gen. It's next gen only, whereas Gran Turismo 7 is cross gen. We know that Forza is coming down the line. We don't know if it's coming this year. There's no release date, but I was fortunate enough to talk to some people who have played it and are part of that kind of development test team, and it's sounding like it's going to shape up to be something truly special. So, to your point, I hope Gran Turismo is excellent, and it even pushes the bar further for motorsports. So. Dan, you are similar to Hoeg, I know, much more of the Horizon guy than the sim racer. Does this interest you at all, or are you not really?
No. I mean, this is, but I think that about most racing games. With Forza, the new one, I played 5 hours, and I was like, well, that's the same game I played for the past 10 years. So it looks pretty. It just looks nice. I mean, it's much better, but it's still the same thing. I mean, it's like playing Madden every year or baseball, and so I have to have that certain level of interest for a game like that for me to purchase something. This will not be happening, not with this game. I don't know, man. I love Forza Motorsport. Like that's, and I did love those older Gran Turismo games as well. It's just it gets so like, I know you don't have to really get into like the fine tuning of the cars and doing all that stuff, but it's really a little bit much for me. I just kind of stay away from this kind of stuff. So it's both of these games that that they talked about this week with the mini state of plays, or the presentations. That I was like, man, I'm not gonna play any one of these. It sucks.
Let's go ahead and segue to Ghostwire Tokyo then, because this game that, at least in my opinion, guys, hasn't showed well to date. It's kind of bizarre. People didn't really know what it wanted to be. The presentation we got last year, the video of it was just like, what is this game? And so we got a much deeper presentation this week, and the team kind of showed a lot to it. It still looks absolutely bizarre, and I still don't fully know what it's trying to be, but I am intrigued. And I like being intrigued. I like bizarre. I like weird. And so I am going to pick this one up and really check it out. Yeah. I hope it's great. I really enjoyed the Evil Within games. I think Tango is a talented studio. Obviously, they have a track record and employees there who have created truly special things in their past development history. So I hope this is really good. There was a report that at one point in time they were making Evil Within 3, and this evolved and changed into its own thing, and so they made it a new IP. But it looks wild. I don't even know really how to describe this game.
I am so excited. I think I trust Tango Gameworks implicitly, because everything that they make is crazy and balls to the wall weird, and it works. Like I had no idea what I was really getting into with the Evil Within, and even if you play the first Evil Within and then immediately jump to Evil Within 2, they're so different that it's like, what the heck? Like Evil Within 2 is like an RPG basically, and it got like open world areas and stuff. So I think that let them be weird, let them make this crazy game, and I'm just gonna go in completely blind and play it. But I'm so excited. I think they're such a talented studio, and they do things that are unique. That's the most important thing to me, I think.
They do. They do. It's different. You know, you're getting an experience you're not going to get anywhere else. So, Rick, this is going to be interesting because we haven't had this conversation with you yet as you join the panel. Is where do you stand on horror games in general?
Oh, I like them. But horror to me encompasses a lot of different types of game, to be honest with you. My favorites are kind of the slightly campy evil scientists in the basement, Resident Evils, the original kind of recipe, rather than while I absolutely love Resident Evil 7 as a VR experience. I think it's one of the best that we actually have out there. I don't tend to love the kind of, I don't know what it is, grimy, disgusting. You're working through that kind of environment. I don't tend to love the jump scare games where you're unarmed and hiding in closets. But as an overall concept, I do like horror. I do like Resident Evil. One of my favorite games ever made is a game called Soma. I don't know if you've discussed that here, which is essentially premised more on existential dread than any other kind of horror. I love that. If you can get me in the existential dread zone, that's where I like to be. Evil Within 2,
spoken like a true lawyer.
Hey, there you go. That's that. Hey, we have very high depression rates and other things, so it is what it is. It's that kind of career. But Evil Within 2, I thought was a big step up from Evil Within. I really enjoyed Evil Within 2 in a way that Evil Within 1 felt like they were finding themselves and how to not be Resident Evil, et cetera, et cetera. I'm interested in this. I do think outside of just horror, there is a place somewhere where it gets too weird for me, especially from kind of Japanese companies, where it becomes difficult for me to engage with. I find this happens sometimes with like the Shin Megami titles. So I'm hopeful that it stays within a place where I'm enjoying myself. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Feels to me like those 7s that I talked about before, where you're doing some weird stuff and that's where you're living, but it's not going to work for everybody, and it probably won't work in every iteration of the ideas that they try. They're an experimental kind of house in the way I think about them. And so I will give it a chance. I like to give everything a chance, especially if it has a novelty factor. I'm not sure whether it will turn out.
Yeah. So Dan, we joke all the time.
That's exciting though.
Yes,
it is. Yeah, and Dan, we joke all the time about horror with you, of course. But did you check out this presentation? I know you said you're not really interested in it, but do you think it's something that you would ever kind of give a shot, or it just doesn't interest you at all?
I mean, just based on what I saw during the presentation, I think it's right there on the cusp of, I think I might be able to play this and enjoy it without having a heart attack. And it, it's just, the animations look really cool. Some of the stuff that they were doing, they looked really cool. I didn't look super scary to, like I can deal with, crazy looking faces and like, the weird looking monsters. That doesn't bother me. It's the jump scares. It's the feeling of, what's around this corner. The suspense is why I failed on Dying Light, the original. So it was, as soon as it went to nighttime, I was done. So,
they eased up on nighttime in Dying Light 2, as best I can tell, in case that interests you. It's not. It's not that kind of horror, really, as much as it's action horror.
Okay. Right. Yeah. I mean, and there are still some games that have horror elements that I enjoy. I mean, there's some out there. It's just I just don't like. I just can't deal with the jump scares. It comes to the point where it's like, do I get my Twinkies and potentially make my heart explode, or play a horror game? And I'll go with the Twinkies 9 times out of 10.
Did you ever give Resident Evil 7 in VR a try? That one is super fun to put people in the helmet.
I didn't get past the gate in the regular Resident Evil 7.
Dan is our resident kind of non-horror guy that we like to joke with about.
I love it. No, I think that's great. I can still hear my buddies scream. I put him in VR and Resident Evil 7. I said, just roll with this. We'll just see how it goes. It was fantastic. Fantastic.
Have you played Half-Life Alyx in VR?
I haven't, because I don't have all those fancy, super expensive VR helmets. But no, I want to. Yeah,
you should.
If I were Sony, that's what I would. If I were Sony, that's what I would license for the PSVR 2. 100%.
Yes,
absolutely.
Super chat here from Mr. Bizzle himself.
Yeah, man. Bizzle with the $5 super chat. I'm fashionably late as always. Sucks being a night shifter. Welcome to the SG crew, Ho.
Thank you. Everybody's been so kind. I'll get the negative comments after a few episodes.
We don't do that here. We don't do that here. Thank you, Bizzle, as always.
Speak
brother.
for yourself, okay? I get a lot of hate in the comments, and I'm proud. Okay,
you bring that upon yourself.
it's true.
All right, so we're gonna save. We're next. Tell you what, that's gonna be a bigger discussion. I think we're gonna save the Google topic for next week. But I did want to ask you guys about this update we got for Battlefield, because it seemed so tone deaf that I don't even really know what to do with it. So we've talked before around Battlefield 2042 landing flat. They came out in their investor call, didn't even mention it's. They said the sales were underwhelming. It's not where they want it to be. All this kind of negativity around the game. Player numbers are way down. And basically, they came out this week on a Battlefield briefing directly from senior producer Ryan MacArthur. And he said, "You've waited patiently to hear from us on what we're doing to address the issues with Battlefield." And I don't know if you guys caught this, but here is quite literally the full update, which was they're refreshing the in-game scoreboard. They're adding all platform voice communication so you can talk to each other. They're updating it so you can update your profile a little better, like your stats and your picture. And then for the people who paid $120, the Ultimate Edition buyers, you're getting some cosmetics. Other than that, they said they're doing a new feedback loop where they're going to take issues and concerns from players more seriously and allow that, easier basically to communicate with the dev team. That's it. That's what they came out and said after 3 months of poor performance and the game basically dying in front of them. There was no roadmap to content. There is no talking about fixes or how they're going to evolve the game to be a better experience. I mean, literally nothing other than here's a few cosmetics. We're listening, and you're going to have a new scoreboard to be able to talk to each other. Does this seem absolutely bizarre to anyone else? It seems completely at odds with anything the community wants to hear. And immediately,
I assume on top of this, they're also doing patches, right? They must have been doing patches.
This statement is related to the delay. This statement is related to them delaying their season pass stuff.
Yes, it is. And they are doing patches for the game. But I think the problem is the game seems so fundamentally broken from even a design perspective. To give you an example of that, right? It's a 128 player game, 64 on 64 is what the core Battlefield 2042 experience was designed around. They actually lowered it to 32 on 32 to try and make the gameplay better for a time being. But keep in mind, the maps, if you've played the game, the maps are absolutely astronomically big. And so the engagement factor that you have with combat is just not there. It's just empty. It's a very, very strange release. It was my most disappointing release of last year because I am a big Battlefield fan. But I got to be honest, guys, with the way this team's talking, the way EA's talking about this game, and what they've done to date, I don't see this game being salvaged. I don't know where Battlefield goes from here.
Into the Anthem pile, maybe? That's where it's going.
Well, so they've got a problem, right? So, I mean, the big problem that they're addressing right now is that they sold content already. They sold content for a year.
They did.
And so this is, I tend to agree with your analysis. This is not a game I play, so let's get that caveat out of the way. I'm following it from afar, 30,000 feet, right? But if you've got a fundamental design issue, if you're realizing that the player base, the market that you sold to doesn't actually like the product that you made, and you pre-sold a year's worth of developer effort into that market, you've got a big issue. And so I think the reason you see a statement delayed as much as it was even until now is that they don't know what to say. They don't know exactly whether or not they should be thinking about refunding, which is just a huge amount of money for the people that bought the versions that have this content so that they could somehow not commit those resources, right? You don't want to send good money after bad, but you already got that money. So this is we say players have to worry about pre-orders on their side. This is the opposite of that. This is the publisher having collected money for pre-orders of, I think, is it 4 updates? Was it supposed to be quarterly for their season pass?
Well, it was supposed to be, yeah.
Yeah, and now deciding how to deal with that, because they now think that that's not actually going to make them the money that their ROI analysis would have said initially, and figuring out what's the best way out. And so what they did was they essentially stood pat, right? That statement is, so they're not going to come out. We know if we don't give you anything, you people that bought it early, you're going to shout. We're going to try to give you a de minimis type of thing. I don't know what their cosmetics are, but they're giving that to the people that
Just
are otherwise.
Yeah.
So they're giving those to the people that otherwise bought in early. And then what wouldn't surprise me, it depends on how you feel about Electronic Arts as an institution, but it wouldn't surprise me if you start to see what I would describe as de minimis compliance with the very specifics of what they said they would give you, right? So if you were supposed to get a map and a mode and these kinds of things, what you might start to see is, well, that map is smallish and doesn't have a lot of extra functionality. And that mode is something that was in a different battlefield that we had the code for, and we slap it on here as they try to mitigate what would otherwise be a more significant loss. And they don't know what to promise you because they don't know what they're going to do. And that's what I hear there. And maybe that's too mean to Electronic Arts, not a phrase I say very often. But that's what I hear. This didn't go to plan, and not to plan, not like it just missed its projections, but like it's an apocalypse. Like that's corporate messaging for this thing didn't work at all. And when we pre-sold stuff to go onto it, and that takes people, that takes time, and that takes a lot of money to make. And so they're figuring out what they want to do.
And Matt here, who shout out to Matt, who's always hanging out with us. He's a massive Battlefield fan. We've talked about line. He plays Battlefield.
More qualified than me.
And as you know, he said they have a game that cannot be fixed easily. And it's like I said, it seems almost fundamental. I think
you can't scrap it and start over though. To Hoeg's point, you can't scrap it and start over when you've sold the game and
when
you've sold
a product and
updates on that game and all that stuff. So
I think what's
them individually, there's not like a collective bargaining unit to go talk to if everybody isn't happy. So what you want to do is you want to No Man's Sky it. You want to say, okay, we're going dark and we'll be back. But these people spent an extra, you said it was $120 to buy the whole thing. So it's another 60. They bought a second game. So so you've got a problem there. If you could somehow, in a perfect world with your psychic communication, say, everybody that bought this is what we're going to do. Can you be satisfied with that? And then cash out only those that weren't, and that kind of thing. You might do that. We don't live in that world. It's impossible to operate there. So they can't just put their heads down and go away and be Hello Games and then come back with something better. This is going to be a cautionary tale for how to deal with pre-orders and whether or not you should do it for a full year and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I think what I was going to say is I think what speaks most to how badly 2042 plays or has been kind of received is that within the package of 2042 is Portal, which basically allows you to play old Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, and on a few maps. That mode is so much better to play than 2042. That mode feels
that hurts.
Yeah, and it's like when I've played Battlefield, all I've wanted to play was Portal because it plays well. But 2042 is a disaster. So I wanted to mention this because I saw a lot of outrage about it as soon as they announced this.
Sounds pretty deserved.
Yeah, and big outlets were calling them out on this. I mean, we did, but I mean, much bigger outlets were calling them out as like, you guys do something. But I don't know. I guess we'll just track this as it goes and see. Dan, did you ever buy Battlefield? By the way, I don't think
this one. No.
Yeah, because of the betas and alphas weren't good either.
So. I saw it was on sale for like $20 like a month after it came out, so I bought it thinking maybe it would get fixed later on. So
sometimes you do that. Sometimes you see Anthem available for $3.99 on the PlayStation Store, and you say, "Nah, it is what it is."
We had a running joke for a long time on this show, Rick, about Anthem. We would mention Anthem 2.0 every single week for a long time.
Oh my god, dude! I
want to talk about going halfway down the wrong path there, right? You have social media posts about space pirates or whatever and all this other stuff, and then nah.
Yep. I know. Very sad. So last thing I want to mention.
Still have $20, just throwing that out there. So.
Dan still has $20 in Anthem credit.
Whoa, really? I wonder how they deal with that. That's crazy.
The store's still open. You can still buy stuff.
Yeah, you can still buy stuff.
Yeah. That game, I think they could have doubled down because people forget when Destiny launched, it was it was a flop basically. The 1.0. I reviewed that game. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Like it did not do well, and I think their thing was that they persevered, and at the time they were sort of the only company doing it, so they were able to pull it around. But you either live long enough to see yourself become No Man's Sky 2.0, or you just give up and die. And I think EA is sort of a give up and let it go type of company, much like Google and the whole thing we're seeing with Stadia. So
historically, EA has been suspect on the margin cases, definitely.
That's right.
Very much so. So the plans, to your point about Destiny, the plans that they laid out, that BioWare laid out for 2.0, what they were going to do, were really solid. I was very excited because they're, as we've said a million times, and we're back on Anthem again. It's hilarious. The foundation for that game was fantastic, but it's a shame that we'll never get to see what it could have become, for sure.
Yeah.
Let me get the super chat from Mr. Captain Chats.
Yeah, EA. The 4, is that euros?
That's pounds.
Pounds. That's pounds. Okay, 4.49. Thank you, man. I have no idea. In America,
every week doesn't know the pound sign. It's so good.
Yeah. What is it? All right. Yeah. EA have missold a product. What's Hoeg's take on this practice of selling undercooked, unfinished products? It's getting ridiculous. You know, I don't disagree with him here. It's like there's so many blueprints out there, Anthem being one of them, of what not to do, and these companies continue to do it. And that's EA, with as a publisher for both of those games. So it boggles my mind as well that we continue to get products put out, and I understand COVID, I understand all this other side, I totally get, but why? And I also understand the publisher and the people need to make money, and I get all that. It's got to hit a certain quarter for.
I'm not defending this.
But I'm just prefacing that by saying, like, what legal ramifications, or are there any ways that are they going to run into it? I guess that's a good question.
You have 40 minutes. Go.
Yeah,
sure. No. So one, in terms of 40 minutes, I got a number of videos on this in Virtual Legality, particularly if you want to look up Anthem. I've covered it in a couple places, Fallout 76. You can go check out those kinds of things. But the long story short on this is you aren't guaranteed a creative product that you like. So we have to separate that out, right? You're not guaranteed that when you go to the movie, you buy your ticket, you're going to have enjoyed your experience. You got to see a movie. If the game is roughly what it says on the tin, we're going to have a lot of problems with doing something like false advertising, that kind of thing. If it doesn't have even the components that they said they had that you actually bought it on, that's when you start to get into fraud or false advertising or that kind of thing. Where I think a lot of people get tripped up is this is half cooked, this mode isn't well thought out, this map doesn't have the right flow, these kinds of things. Bad design, which is legitimately worthy of criticism, is probably not worthy of legal redress. And I don't know, because I don't play Battlefield 2042, how close to that line they are. Certainly when you give me statements that say we're readjusting our scoreboard, it suggests that there are fundamental problems with what they actually deliver to the player base that is their market. But I don't know. Most of the time I will tell you, not quite knee-jerk, but it's kind of a baseline. People ask me, is this false advertising? Can we sue? The answer is going to be no. It has to be something quantifiable that's a lie, that is against what they said.
I mean, you can sue that
product,
but you won't.
Which? Oh, yes.
You can sue
I have another
anything,
video.
yeah.
I have another video on the channel that says anyone can sue anyone for everything. But whether or not you'll succeed is another question. And so, do you have a false advertising complaint? I'd have to see. It's all facts and circumstances. You have to see what they said, what was delivered, that kind of thing. Certainly they're walking the line with a delay like what they're doing with what they promised, because probably I'd be willing to bet they sell that season pass and it says something along the lines of these will be delivered in 2022 or 2021 to 2022. And I noticed this when I go through the legalese. They don't always reserve like a lawyer would tell them to, which is like, we intend to deliver it then. It's projected to be out by then. They tend to be pretty definitive with that. It's going to come out in the next 6 months or next year, because they know how to deliver DLC maps, right? I mean, like, they know what that pipeline is. They just don't necessarily want to spend money on it right now. So long answer to your short question, assume it's probably a pretty difficult case to bring, but there can be cases where people walk across the line, and that's going to be facts and circumstances based, as so many things are.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you for the super chat, Captain. Appreciate it, man. So last thing I want to mention today, guys, is Nintendo, actually. So if you missed the news, the Nintendo Switch is now the best-selling Nintendo console of all time.
Yay.
In their recent report, it passed 103.5 million units sold, which passes the Wii at 101 million, their prior best-selling console.
It's pretty good generations between that one in the middle.
Yes. And Nintendo is always kind of up and down like that. But it's funny because you see the people, the older guys like myself, who are like, who don't pay close attention to this. Like, well, didn't the NES sell like billions of consoles? And NES actually only sold like 52 or something like that.
Fewer people on the
weren't as
planet
many
Earth,
gamers. Like, I feel like there's always every console is always going to outsell the last console because the market is exploding and there's so many more gamers now. So
Wii U would like to have a word with you, sir.
Yeah, but that's what you get when you actually take risk with your consoles and experiment. Okay, they have
fair.
hits and misses. So
that's fair. So this is great news for Nintendo. We talk all the time about how successful they've been. The Switch is obviously bombshell, runaway success. One question I want to pose to you guys: the long-standing statement has been that the PlayStation 2 as a console will never be passed in terms of sales. It sold 155 million units. It sold for nearly 13 years. It is
and has a very interesting reason why, by the way.
It is far and away the best-selling console of all time, home console of all time, right? So this week we learned the Switch has been on this record pace for some time now, right? It's coming up on the 5th year of its release since March of 2017. So next month will be 5 years for the Switch. However, Nintendo said this week, which seems weird because we all know the issues with the hardware itself, but let's put that aside for now, that the Switch is not even halfway through its life cycle. Nintendo said that this week. So does it stand to reason, and do you believe, we're going to place bets at this moment, fellas, receipts for years to come, will the Switch surpass the PlayStation 2 years from now as the best-selling console of all time?
Does the OLED model count in that number?
Yes.
And so would a CPU, GPU upgraded Super Switch count in that number?
That's where you start to get hairlines, but let's assume yes.
Then yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm buying 3. As soon as they make a Super Switch available, I got 3 for this house. I thought it was going to be the end of last year.
For
no,
sure.
I mean, seriously. I have been prepped to buy more Switches for a long time. I refuse to buy it at the current hardware configuration. The OLED wasn't enough. The next hardware pass, I'm getting 3 for me and my girls.
Yeah.
No question.
For every child that is born, a Switch is sold. So I think that it will definitely pass if it manages to stay confined within the same model. The PS2's ability to actually sell as many consoles as it did is actually a super interesting story that you can read about in long form things. But the actual reason is because at the time, the PlayStation 2 was the single cheapest, most affordable way to get a DVD player at the turn of the century, or the advent of the DVD player. And they were, shipping those things out to like Africa and countries that didn't have DVD players, and it just sold like crazy. And it kind of has nothing to do with games, but it holds that title. So I think
we remember
the games industry is now big enough to where even that will probably be overcome by a console at some point. It really just depends on how long console manufacturers insist on selling that same model of console. But it's kind of inevitable if they continue to just sell the Switch and not actually do like a hardware refresh of some kind.
That's what I was going to say. It's going to be kind of a weird line to draw if they do like Switch Pro, but then come out with Switch 2. You know what I mean? Because Switch 2 would be a different console, whereas like a PS4 Pro, Xbox One X are considered the same.
I think even Nintendo can read the writing on the wall here. Regardless of how you feel of generations being dead or not, there is a certain amount of you need to play the stuff I bought already that is really coming into fruition with both the PlayStation 5 and the Series X. And so I would be very surprised if Nintendo very much surprises me all the time. So, it is what it is. But I would be very surprised if Nintendo didn't make essentially a Switch ecosystem that says the Switch Pro is going to run everything you bought on your Switch. It's just going to not be so dumpy. I love my Switch, but I would love to be able to play, Legend of Zelda without frame rate hitches every 2 seconds and something with a slightly higher resolution. I'm having such a good time playing Arceus with my daughter. Yeah. But, It would be great if we didn't have jagged edges on everything. Just little things.
Or if the open world was actually populated by more than like 4 bushes and a tree.
I like how they're
crazy.
I mean, it's chill. I have no problem with how Arceus looks as an artistic direction, but I do have a problem with the technology and the pop in and things like that.
Yeah. By the way, our official word going forward for such things is going to be dumpy. So we're
dumpy. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good way to describe it. It's a little dumpy.
I like it.
I'll also be interested to see how Nintendo deals with the fact that the Switch was already behind the technology curve during the Xbox One, PS4 era with the Switch, and now we're in the Xbox Series X, PS5 era, and there's probably going to be, if they're only halfway through theirs, I would say that we're probably a good portion of the way through PS5 and Xbox Series X already before we get our first hardware refresh. It'll probably happen in the next 3 years. You gotta imagine. So that means that there's going to be even another leap forward before the Switch is replaced. And I'm very curious how they're going to deal with that, given the fact that Arceus just came out, and the first thing people said about it was that it seems like the Switch technology is holding that game back. And
yeah,
I mean, they're still selling like crazy, but it's got to be something they're thinking about. So.
They don't care. They don't.
Well, at the fundamental level,
they're raking in money hand over fist. Why would you care?
There's a place where they care, but yeah, they don't fundamentally care. And I that's to Nintendo's credit. You can't win the arms race against the two, so go a different direction and make your own arms.
Oh man. What was I going to say? Darn it, I lost my train of thought. The only other thing is obviously it's not a direct competitor. I'm not meaning that here, but to your point, Travis, around it being kind of that first full portable console, the Steam Deck is about to arrive, and the Steam Deck is miles ahead in terms of hardware, capability. Like I said, not a direct comparison at all, but it is showing that the capability to build a handheld console like the Switch with much more power is there. And the kind of mobile hardware that runs, because that's what it is, the laptop, it's mobile, basically CPU, GPU type hardware, is so much more advanced than where the Switch is nowadays by miles and miles.
But it don't run Mario. That's all I gotta say.
True.
I think that's always going to be the differentiator. I don't think it'll outsell the Switch. I don't think.
No.
I think it's going to have a very high adoption rate at the beginning, and then people are going to start discovering that it doesn't actually play all the games in your Steam library, because not all games can be played on a gamepad, and then it's going to be, it'll probably lose momentum. Well, we'll see. I hope they surprise me. I did get to use the Steam Deck.
Just saying that
you got your hands on the thing. That's fun.
Yeah. We did the IGN first for that console, so we got to go.
No, I'm looking forward to it whenever. But yeah, it's super niche. Yeah, it's gonna be
absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, guys, that's gonna wrap us up for today. Chat, you've been fantastic today. Thanks for being so engaged with us. If you haven't already hit that like button, please do. And coming up this week, so I said my SIFU review is up. You can check that out. We're gonna be doing a live stream of that and some guides and tips as well. Feel free as always to reach out to me on Twitter. If you're playing the game and confused about something or just need some tips, I have a lot of time into it already. I'm happy to help. We also have a new series debuting on the channel later this week. It's up for patrons only right now. It'll be up for everyone. I want to say Tuesday or Wednesday. It's called For the Record. It is a series I'm doing with Carl from Season Gaming, who is our resident tech expert. Very, very, very knowledgeable tech guy. And in this first episode, what we do is break down the storage solutions for modern PCs, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series consoles, and we talk about things like sampler feedback streaming, direct storage, velocity architecture, all these things you hear from PlayStation and Xbox around this technology and what it actually means to games, and we break it down for you, so that everyone can understand it. So it's a new series we're trying. We're going to tackle a range of different tech-related topics over, months and months to come. Let us know what you think. I'd love to hear some feedback, but look forward to that, like I said, about the middle of the week. So with that, that's going to wrap us up. Travis, where can people find you, man?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at TagGuyTravis if you are a masochist. You can watch me on the Last Word every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific. And you can read my articles, previews, and reviews on IGN.com. This week I reviewed Dying Light 2. I also have a preview for a game I can't talk about that's going live on February 10th. And I'm also reviewing this week Far Cry 6's third expansion, the Joseph Seed expansion called Collapse. So that review will probably be up early this week. So that's me.
Sweet.
How about you, Hoeg?
Those games are goofy. I like them more.
They are. They're goofy games.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'll look forward to that one. Your masochist comment. I assume that's just because you're on Twitter, not because we're listening to you. You do good stuff. Twitter is just a masochistic place. You can find me, speaking of, on Twitter at Hoeglaw, HOEGLAW. And I think more specifically for folks interested in these kinds of conversations, virtual legality at the Hoeglaw YouTube channel, youtube.com/Hoeglaw. A lot of videos recently about the Bungie Sony deal, a lot about various other things, big NFL lawsuits. We'd like to cover a lot of stuff in pop culture. So if you're interested in the business and law of the way the world works through the lens of the things you might otherwise be interested in, check us out over there, 100%.
Appreciate it. Dan.
See you next week.
Thanks as always. If you're listening to us after the fact, definitely give us a rating up on Apple. I don't think Amazon yet, but Apple or Spotify. We greatly appreciate it. If you're enjoying this, please let us know. As always, Bitcast is your weekly gaming show covering all things Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, and PC with industry and technical insight. Until next week. See ya.